From our first FNCS group of the Major, we saw a variety of ways that players are getting around the map. Let's break down how some of our top players are making the most out of the new mobility items introduced this season. The first item we'll take a look at is Sub-Zero's Combat Kit. The strength of this item is with the 3 dashes that each recharge after 10 seconds, giving you the ability to cover distance immediately. This is great for a quick dash, however the main trade-off with it is that these dashes cover a much shorter distance than other mobility items, making them less efficient for those longer rotations. We saw this last weekend when teams that had one player carrying the kit had to box up more often and make smaller, slower rotations, burning through materials. The attack feature of the kit is also a solid option for close-range engagements when you don't have a gun or ammo. This is a good place to start when considering mobility, and as long as you're using them correctly, you'll be able to make safe rotations. This season introduced a new mechanic, Gold Rush, which gives you increased movement speed and a faster pickaxe swing for a limited time. There are of course ways that you can get this effect naturally around the map, but the most popular way for competitive players is through the Gold Splash item. This item works very similarly to the original Chug Splashes in terms of health regeneration, however grant you the Gold Rush effect for 20 seconds. At the highest level of competition, this boost is vital, as we see a lot of teams using these to not only rotate faster, but to also quickly close in on fights after a beam. And with the pickaxe speed increase, allow them to get into their opponent's box much quicker when they get there. You can of course gather these splashes in the usual way, however top competitive players know that you can buy them 100% of the time at the backwards black market in Magic Mosses, at a cost of 150 gold per stack of 2. This is why we saw a lot of teams rotating through here to get an insane number of splashes, which helps propel them through all stages of the game. The main and clear favorite mobility item amongst competitive players this season is the Knee Capper Baseball Bat. This is an item that, when held out, gives you an increased sprint speed, reduced stamina depletion, and a boosted jump when sprinting, that also makes you immune to fall damage, which even some of the best players in the world are still struggling to get to grips with. Anyway, this speed increase can also be combined with the Gold Splashes to allow you to go even quicker, something that we saw a lot of our top teams take advantage of to quickly get to the front side of zone in endgame, or even to get out of the storm more efficiently. Also, although it's used a lot less than the sprint feature of the item, you can also use the Charge Smash to hit your teammates across the map and allow them to take 0 fall damage. This ability can allow teams to cover a large distance quickly if not all players are lucky enough to have it in their inventory. One more feature of this item that was very effective last weekend was the Melee Attack. This is a perfect way to get out of trouble as a last-minute bailout, or even turn a fight inside of a box into a quick home run. This has similarities to what we saw last season with the Typhoon Blade, as it's really effective for top players to get easy Storm Surge damage while inside of an opponent's box, if they need a quick solution to their Storm Surge problems. With so many ways that players can move around the map this season, and unique playstyles that we've already seen with these mobility items, we can't wait to see how the rest of Major 2 unfolds.
Welcome to the FNCS Pro-Am!
FNCS Season 2, Group 2, which means one thing. It is Super Saturday, and joining me to talk through the action, it is Levin and Takata. And you guys are kind of like a pro-am duo, because Takata, we were just talking about your illustrious pro career. Can you tell us why you're the greatest of all time, you know? Well, at least back in 2018 anyway.
Yeah, I think you're gassing me up a little too much there, Frankie. I saw Levin's reaction too. We'll leave that for another one.
Oh, well, that's a shame, because Levin, you'd be a fabulous creator partner, I'm sure. Not that I don't. You never play with me.
I play. I compete. You know, I think I bring the energy. I bring composure. That's what you need in a good team.
You can be the courage to my cold, you know, like something like that.
I hope you'd respond to me though. That'd be nice.
PSA, please, Cold, if you're seeing this, please respond to courage. Now let's talk about some of the trios that we're going to be seeing competing today, because the lobby is looking hot, and they don't really come much hotter than Vico, Veno, and Flixie Takata.
Yeah, I love this trio. I mean, going back to last season, they were the favorites all throughout FNCS, going up to those major finals where they ended up winning the whole thing. And this time around, at the start of the season, you'd think, you know, they have that same respect. Go for the best POI, go for the best drop spot. And I mean, rightfully so, they played incredibly well. I mean, throughout the first 3 divisional cups, they were getting to the late game in every single match. They were performing incredibly well, but it started falling off later on in the season, Levin.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think the symptoms were there earlier on, even in some of the div cups where they were doing a bit better. Like you mentioned, they've sort of tried to land everywhere, right? They sort of came into this season and they were landing Crime City, which made sense because whenever you win that first major, the benefit is, you know, you're the strongest team, you've claimed the best POI, and so, you know, you sort of have that POI free for yourself until globals, right? Nobody wants to con a team that's already quad globals. Then they tried landing Mars Meadows, they were landing Lone of Willer one week, and now they've decided to land to the west of Mars Meadows here at this mountain. And it's a bit of an unconventional spot for a team as good as them who secured a global spot. A lot of people are probably looking at this thinking, wow, they're landing at like a big name POI Takata.
Oh yeah, well, there's a good reason for it, Levin. I mean, 5 potential car spawns. Each car gets you Chug Jug, gets you Mythic, gets you heals, 23 guaranteed chests, another 43 50-50 chests. I mean, all of Seaport only has 32 chests, Levin. So in terms of loot, they basically have like 2 different drop spots secured just for themselves.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels that way. And of course, just other parts of that spot, right? You mentioned some of the trucks that they get there. They always have a high percentage chance of getting a truck. They have launch pads as well. 2 launch pads on those hills make it so that they can rotate sort of far and wide, which definitely plays into their hand. We know how much of a top fighting team this is. The best fighting team in this lobby, the best fighting team in EU, most people would say. And I think we need to put some more respect on their fighting ability. We all know it, but let's actually look at an example of them fighting, because I think sometimes we forget just how good these guys are at fighting. So I've actually found a clip here from them landing at this POI in one of the recent tournaments. And if we look at the setup here, you have Finn, who's another team, right? And he's landed here and they're contesting them. Veno and Vico are in a situation where they're close by and Finn's trying to sneak up on them and try to fight them. Very problematic for Finn because, you know, he's about to be in a world of hurt. But in this situation, it's actually Flixie's role now, right? To stop Sharif and Maldis from being able to rotate and support Finn, right? Because that's what they're going to try to do. As soon as Finn starts fighting, they're going to try run on over and help him so that they can 3v2 Veno and Vico. So Flixie has to stop that. So we know what Flixie's job is here as a supportive sort of player in this team. So let's run the clip now and see how this plays out. Because as we'll see, Flixie does his job fantastically. Big damage here onto Shershif, cracks him, gets him low HP, and this just pins them back, right? Sharif and Maldis, they can't support Finn now, right? They're pinned back, they're held back, and that time delaying gives the time to Vico and Veno to 2v1 Finn. And Takata, you've played the game at a high level. In this situation, what did they do here now?
I mean, I'm going for the 2v1 personally.
I mean,
advantage, I'm taking the 2v1.
Take the 2v1 all day long. That's what most people do, but not this trio, because they have Vico. They have star power. They have one of the best fraggers and fighters in the world, and Veno knows this. So he knows, I don't need to take a 2v1. I can let Vico take his 1v1 and support Flixie now. So that's what he does. He builds up on height, looks down at Sharif and Maldis, because they're not even paying attention to him, right? They're going to be focused on Flixie, who's taking shots at them. And so we'll see how it plays out here. Vico can start 1v1ing, Veno can sit up on height, the intelligence to actually realize, hey, I can support Flixie now, they're not going to be paying attention. He takes Sharif down. Vico now can just use what he has best. We know he has that 0 ping. He's always going to take the walls. You can never stop him. He wins his fight, his 1v1, and then now they can finish the 3v1 together. You see the different elements within the team. Flixie supportively helping, delaying for his teammates. Vico, the best fighter in the world, or in EU at least. I think some people disagree with that. Vico in that situation, the best fighter in EU, and then Veno, the leader of the team, taking the initiative, the intelligence to realize I can leave Vico in the 1v1 and help Flixie now. We see these roles rotate within them in many different fighting situations, but I really thought that fight was cool.
Levin, that was a glowing evaluation, but Takata, I'm seeing that results from this trio, they haven't exactly been consistent so far in Season 2.
Well, they haven't been consistent in the later part. If we actually look at the results, I mean, in the first 3 Div Cups, out of 18 finals matches that they played, they got top 25 in every single game, literally 18 out of 18. But in the final 2, the most recent last 2 Divisional Cup finals, out of 12 matches, they only made top 25 in 4 out of those 12 matches. So it's 100% of the time in the first 3 Div Cups and only 33% of the time in the most recent 2. So, I mean, this is a big reason to why they decided to change that drop spot, Levin.
Yeah, and I think they're finding it hard to find the right balance, right? Because when you have Flixie and Vico, it probably makes sense to play a style where you're just super aggressive, fighting as many people as possible, almost like how Peterbot plays at times in NA, right? But Veno's always been known for wanting to play perfect Fortnite, not relying on too many eliminations, and I think they're struggling to find that balance, but I'd like to think they'll be able to work things out. And frankly, the beauty of it is, if they don't, they're still qualified to Globals anyway.
Yeah, but Veno's not going to be happy with that. We know that, don't we? Mini Miner and Taco. What are you thinking of this trio this season?
At the end of the day, it's a Blade of Champions title that Vico and Veno Flixie are looking to defend here, Mini Miner. But they're not the only team in the lobby today that features a lot of fighting power. Chap, Teeny, Svi. We just saw this trio recently come together in the most recent Week 1 divisional finals. And as far as Week 5 performances were concerned, they look like they're pretty much top tier.
Yeah, really solid from them, as you mentioned, just coming together there for that Week 5 Div 1 Cup. They came 4th in that event as well, and they've sort of been mixing around different duos and trios, sticking together. I know Teeny and Skavi play with Trulex, and Kiduo was playing with Shark and Chap, of course, who is in this trio now. So I'm excited to see how that trio are going to do today. Of course, they're landing at an uncontested Crime City as well, so this is going to be, hopefully, a nice win for them.
Yeah, every team that's going to look to try and basically establish their mark from those uncontested spots. But same might not be said as far as Blaha, Mixon, and Combek are concerned, because they're landing at a familiar POI. It's going to be Shining Span. Last season, they were at Shattered Span. It's the exact same place, only the new feature this time, Mini, is that they're going to be dealing with an uncontested Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache out of Seaport City.
Yeah, but this is a team that we know, they know the drop spot very well. They've been very, very consistent while landing here, not just in games, but also in these Divisional Cup finals. I mean, in week number 4, they came 2nd, and guess who had the most eliminations in that week? It was Mixon, which is not someone that we'd associate with that many eliminations. So it seems like this is a team that have what it takes to get that consistency through today. I don't think they're going to win a game, because that doesn't seem like the way they're going to go about it, but I'm expecting to see them in that top 5 today.
It's definitely going to be a close-knit finish as far as some of these teams are concerned, Mini. But again, they're not the only trios looking to try and duke it out here in Group 2.
Thank you very much, guys. Yes, there are so many big-name duos here this weekend. And in Group 2, we also have Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache. And Levin, I mean, this is as close as you get to a flawless trio right now.
I love this team for so many reasons. I mean, when you look at how things went for them in Major 1, they were contested in the Major 1 finals, still managed to pull out a 4th place, being conned every single game at Seaport. And I think myself and many other people walked away from that finals actually feeling like they're the second best team in the region. Coming into this major, I think a lot of people probably feel now that they are the best team in EU. And one of the most beautiful things, which, you know, he's my mate, so I'll make this joke. Queasy obviously qualified in 2024 in the first major, and he kind of just like slacked off for the rest of the year, right? Because he was qualified. The fact that he didn't qualify in Major 1 means that he's had to stay locked in. And you can say the same for Mustache as well, because it applied to him last year a bit. So the fact that these guys have had to stay locked in has meant that we have had some amazing performances from them this season.
Oh yeah, that shows. I mean, they're the only trio that's won 2 Div Cup finals this season. They have very high expectations, even though, like you said, they got 4th. Just the names, Queasy IGLing, Swizzy Merstash. I mean, these are titans of EU, and now that they have uncontested Seaport, I wouldn't be surprised if they win one of the first games today and qualify themselves.
One and done.
Can they not win until game number 5? Because I really want to get as much Queasy time as possible. And if they win game 1, then they literally go through to next weekend's grand finals. We don't get to see them play again, but I'm not allowed to have that opinion, am I? So we're going to move on to another trio, Malabuka, Ping, and Vox. This is a high-fragging, super-powered trio, and the chemistry is really on point here, Takata.
Yeah, I love this trio, especially seeing that Malabuka is boot camping in 0 ping right now. I mean, they're landing at Lavish Lair, which is a drop spot where, you know, you tend to play more aggressive from. And this trio literally has the highest average eliminations in set lobby finals this season. They played very well at the start of this season in the Div Cup finals. But as time went on, Levin, I mean, the most recent Div Cup, the play-ins, it didn't quite go their way.
Yeah, they've sort of like, you know, tailored off a bit results-wise. And this was a team that last season, I think, sort of matched expectations just about, right? I think a lot of people saw them as a team that was going to contend for the FNCS, and they did just that, placed in 2nd. You know, they've secured their spot, and I think there's a comfort in that. But I would like to see them sort of get back to how they were playing earlier in the season, where they are just ruthless in their aggression. And you know, regardless of how results maybe have went for them in the Div Cup finals, Takara, I am still confident this team qualifies through today, right? They're a team that, you know, you expect to see them win a game, but absolutely they will consistently make it to enough end games to qualify in consistency. They're one of the teams where you just look at it as like a shoo-in.
Yeah.
Well, Levin, we've got to talk about Cami, Seti, and Chari, because this is a trio where if there were any other names and had that performance, you would expect them to go their separate ways, because the Major 1 Grand Finals, let's face it, it was a bit of a disappointment for these guys. However, they're doing it. They're sticking together for Poland and for the legend of Cami and Seti, and now Chari as well. Levin, talk me through how things have been for them in Season 2. Are things looking up?
Well, yes. But we have to look at the situation.
We should look back, shouldn't we? Yeah, let's actually put it into context here, yeah.
Because you're right, Frankie, right? You know, last grand finals didn't go good enough for them, right? They were contested and they lost bad. But the problem is that when you look at the past major finals performances, they have consistently just been bad, right? They've had one where they came in the top 20, they came 3rd in Chapter 4 Season 2, or Chapter 5 Season 2, sorry. And the other side of that, they just haven't quite got the job done.
Yeah, but look, in terms of previous major finals, they haven't done quite well. But if we look back, not only at the major finals, it's leading up to that point. They've always done well, Levin. They've always done well leading up to those major finals. They end up getting contested, and then they don't do as well. And it's a repeat this season as well. If we look at their Div Cup finals placements this season, they are literally the most consistent trio compared to any of the other trios on EU. They have an average placement in Div Cup finals of 5.4. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, Levin.
No, absolutely. And that's why it's a bit hard sort of talking about this team and analyzing them, because if you actually watch the Fortnite they play, they have played fantastically. They are one of the best teams in the region, undoubtedly. If you have eyes and you can use them, you can see that, right? But the problem is, right, in this division, or in this group, sorry, they're going to be uncontested, and so guess what's going to happen? They're going to do really good. They're going to win a game probably, might just do it on consistency, but they're going to play top Fortnite today. I can guarantee you that. What I can't guarantee you is that they'll be uncontested come the major finals, right? And that's why it's the balance. It's like, you know, you look at some of the finals results, and I think most of the top teams probably would have went their separate ways, like you rightly highlighted. But when they're playing as good as they play, it's hard to make that call, you know? It's a really weird situation for them right now, I think.
The thing that's really interesting for me about these guys as well is that they have so much respect from the other pros. I mean, Levin, you had Queasy and Fantasia, your podcast recently, and he had really great things to say about these guys. And Venno said similar. So what exactly did Queasy say to you?
Yeah, so let's read it out here. We'll read out what Queasy had to say. I asked Queasy, who's your biggest threat this season? right? And he said, Cammy, City, and Chari easily. They're doing the sneaky gimmick again. They're quiet. They're playing all the scrims. They got their invitational balloon strat right now from Brutal with the pad on the top of the hill. They're stacking up heals, getting cap surge, and then padding around, right? And, you know, it's funny because when I interviewed him on my podcast, again, nice little plug, Queasy mentioned that, like, he was learning from them. Like, a big part of why he's been successful is because he watched some of their games and he figured out how to play this season based off of them. And if we look at what Venno said when he was on my podcast, he basically said the exact same thing, right? He said, let's get it up, let's get the quote up, right? Because he essentially said what I think a lot of top players do every season is, if you want to learn how the new season should be played, you watch Cammy and Seti's first tournament. This is the level of player we're at, where the top players in the region look at these guys. So clearly, they're still good enough. They should still stick together, but they need to figure things out contested.
If you don't stop talking, we're not going to have time to actually look at them because we've got to head into game, mate. They're on the battle bus. Let's head over to Mini and Takata to Take again.
That's right, Frankie. But 10 more teams looking to try and lock in their spots for our Major 2 finals here today, Mini Minor. And if you just looked at a general overview of what Group 2 actually consists of, it would look like a Major 2 finals lobby already. But that's not the case here. It's just 10 teams exclusively that are trying to lock in.
Yeah, so many big names that are going to be playing today. I'm super excited to see who can come out on top. And this has been the group that everyone's been looking forward to. So let's get straight into it.
Everybody wants their opportunity at the Major 2 finals, but with so many prestigious teams competing here today, Mini Minor, there's bound to be some huge upsets taking place, and that last chance qualifier could get really spicy after today.
Yeah, definitely. This is definitely the one for the casual. If you want there to be a sort of group that has the stacker in it, this is the one that you want to be watching. Particularly, as you mentioned, it's going to make the LCQ that much more interesting if things do go wrong for some of the top teams. But for Rax already, he's already fallen. Andrix goes down there as well, though, so things are already starting to get heated up Foxy Floodgate. We knew this was going to be a feisty off-spawn. A few different teams shaping up to go here. It looks as though Rax does eventually fall. Radion there as well, and it's Veek, CK, and Adrix that come out on top there.
Still gonna have to worry about playing for that reboot later on, and they're not the only ones. Axforce, Della closing in. Bevy's also lurking nearby, trying to see if they can get a flank. Working by the Kappa Factory. Bevy's overhead view, breaking through the roof now, just trying to confirm that he doesn't have opportunity here for Ewig to return fire. So Bevy's just continuing, kind of scatter around the roof side, but if he's not careful, he might eat more damage than what he's bargaining for. Still, things a little bit of a standstill here. Neither side really getting the advantage. There's Bevy's finally with some opening shots, but return fire, the problem. He'll have to fall back, reunite with this trio. A slow play now taking place.
Yeah, you can see their shotguns. Every single player does have that sort of close range. They have an auto, they have an outlaw. They need to close in here. They need to try and get someone to hop in. You can see Della there with the auto, already connecting with the shots. Fantastic there. Knock onto Unzen. Really nicely done, but does get attacked from another angle as well. He's got to be so careful. Luckily for him, Bevies is there to clutch up and find the couple of knocks, which wins them the off-spawn battle. Each player getting elimination there. It's really nicely done from them, and that's what they needed to do. They need to just close in, get close up, and that's ultimately what turns the tides for them for that fight.
Some very decisive off-spawns already taking place. Siren, Voltiax, and Cool could find themselves thrown into the heart of battle as well. Keto just trying to wrap around currently. Look for an angle, has that infiltrator stand by. But Hydro, one of our trios that kind of came in at the final hour for today's group match, and Cool just looking to break through, but gets into the box. Not exactly the kind of exchange he was hoping for. That's going to be a return fire. Hydro, though, looking to close things off. Siren knocked, eliminated, and a cleanup crew just in time. Keto will be brought back into the action. One more trio just continuing to carve their way forward.
It's such an awkward area of the map there as well when they're fighting in these sort of tubes and the sort of sewers, if you like. It's just so difficult. And you can see when they had that control of that area, they could look down on the other team, and they had that position. You can see right here, the other team just couldn't stand a chance. They couldn't see them. They had those right-hand peaks, and that's what Hydro was doing really well there, just holding onto that right-hand peak and ensuring that they didn't get a chance to fight back. But really nicely done there from the experienced Kaijo.
Some very familiar scenes, though, for Venno, Vico, and Flixie. Just using the mountain span to their advantage. Levin made note of a couple of those launch pads that sit atop of this Big Ben tunnel split, and for good reason. It just makes this team so mobile. So while Vico just prioritizes getting some mats online from that southward split out of splitting pins, rest of his team's just going to look to try and be a little bit more aggressive with their Surge farm. Merstash, Swizzy, Queasy, they've also got to keep tabs on what's happening surrounding them, especially given the fact that Queasy is no longer even a part of the conversation. Eliminated earlier on, but Merstash and Swizzy, the fact that they're still relatively healthy here at Seaport City leads me to believe, Minnie, that they'll have an opportunity to go for the reboot ban soon enough.
Yeah, we didn't get to see that, obviously. I think maybe Queasy was taken out of the air. Maybe another one of our players with one of those sort of scoped ARs was able to take him out. So really not an ideal situation for them off spawn. As you mentioned, they do have it uncontested, so they should be okay. Fredoxy, Pablo Wingo, Chino. These guys coming out of that Mars Meadows area, they were very much confident in going for the black market as well. They claimed it. They said, this is ours. We are going for it. And this is exactly what they're doing here. I mean, uncontested Mars Meadows is a drop spot that you expect a team to find a victory royale from, especially with the experience of all three of these players. And I like the way that they're basing up here. They're making sure that nobody is even going to look at that black market as Fredoxy decides to build a skyscraper on top. Really claiming that position.
Aiden, Harfine, and Michael, though, find themselves in a little bit of a skirmish deep inside of Shiny Shafts. Seemingly on the better end of it currently, though, as they'll take the time, reunite as a group, might get an opportunity here to look back on what actually took place. And sure enough, it's just the immediate charge through. Absolutely no time to waste. Kiru doesn't really have an opportunity to respond, but lurkarounds are what teams are really going to have to keep in mind here. Lucy and Loki, along with QB, they are just waiting for the optimal moment to strike. And this is a big patience game, but the trade-off could definitely be worth it if Aiden, Harfine, and Michael are not careful.
Yeah, this is something what we saw the reverse of last week, where we saw the Shiny Shafts team actually W-keying the sort of Outlaw Oasis side of things in iDrop, Sky, and Scroll. We saw them just being so mobile. Now I think it's going to be Lucy, Loki, and QB who are going to be doing that and closing in on some of the teams that are fighting there at Shiny Shafts. And they're just being very, very patient now, which is exactly what they need to do. They don't need to rush in too quickly. This is game number one. We saw it last week, or yeah, last Sunday. So many players decided to play a little bit more slower in that first game of the group. It definitely wasn't one to watch in terms of eliminations and all-out fragging power, but I think AD and Hardfind and co here, they're very much aware of the presence there of Lucy, Loki, and QB. They're playing things very, very carefully. And again, Taco, it's these awkward little fights in here which can be pretty good for not getting third-partied, but so difficult to navigate when you're a team that's in this situation.
But Loki and Lucy, they are committed to this. Aiden, Harfine, Michael, they're not convinced. Finally, they're going to get their chance, but it doesn't actually come to fruition here for QB. He's not going to be able to find any sort of an opening sequence. Instead, going to opt to just try and play the waiting game. But you have to remember, Minnie, one of these teams already found 4 eliminations, and the other has absolutely nothing to their name. So you can only commit so much time before you have to start actually collecting surge damage to play out your mid-game later on. And surge is going to be something that Cranky's not having too many difficulties finding, and he's got to clutch this one up because losing a teammate so early on, you just want to be able to go for those reboot plays as quickly as possible so you can start putting the pieces back together.
Yeah, nice to see there from Cranky. Cranky, who himself calls himself the new Peterbot. So, going to be looking into whether that is true today. Already getting off to a decent enough start, though. So, keep your eyes peeled on Cranky to see whether that could be true. But for Maxi, Amos, and Iron right here, these guys inside of that fight as well. Difficult situation for all players. They're jumping on in. Cranky does find Elise right there. Really nice knock from him, but it's all just boiling over here. So many players inside of the box, and they do eventually fall.
Just an all-out brawl taking place, but these fringe positions on the map becomes all the more crucial for you to find that early surge, because you have to expect it's going to be very difficult for these teams as they're rotating inwards with some of these later zone pools to not be held on the edge of zone. But if we're talking about teams that know how to play clinical Fortnite, Ari, Seti, Cammy are always going to be leading the charge in that conversation. And with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, if you ask me, Minnie, because they know they have to perform this season.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we saw the analysts break it down earlier on. You can just make out a few of those heals inside of that Surge base. The quote from Queasy on the Fantasia podcast talking about how they do sort of stack those heals in these various Surge bases they create. Very similar to that 2022 Invitational on the balloons, just stacking up those heals. Just allows them to trade that Storm Surge damage when they're going for shots. They can overpeak a little bit more. They can afford to take more damage. Of course, they need to get those heals from their uncontested drop spot, which is going to be very, very crucial for them. Vico, Veno, Flixie, not quite a fan of that Skyscraper. As this is what we broke down, what 11 broke down at the beginning of the show today. This is how this team go about these fights. Sneaking, making sure that there's always one player that's providing some pressure, some suppressive fire from elsewhere. And you can see Vico just lurking right now. If he gets inside of that 1v1 situation, it can only end one way. And that's why he's just looking for that opportunity right now, Taka. He's looking for an opening, a potential to pounce. He's holding that left-hand peak, keeping an eye on all the surroundings, but no, he gets spotted out, he gets found out, and that's why he's retreating.
It's also Veno forfeiting that high ground overview that he'd initially had. Seems as if he might have suspected there was a little bit more company coming from an opposite way, but Loki, Lushi, QB talking about the fact that they needed to find their damage somewhere, and inside of the storm they will collect Zaro, but unfortunately they still have a little bit of a ways to go. Here's V-Chap and Teeny. A lot of fighting power behind this team, and Minos, unfortunately, on the receiving end of it. That's going to be one elimination in tow now for Chap's trio. A big one, in fact, because they still have a couple other trios rolling around the outskirts of Crime City.
Yeah, this is a dangerous trio. You don't want to be on the receiving end of a fight with these guys. They have that fragging power combined with those mythics that they can get from their black market outside of Crime City as well. And this is how they went about that elimination. Didn't even need those mythic shotguns. It was that 3-2-1 on that weakened wall, and that's so dangerous for players when you do have that wood in particular that is weak. Opportunistic players, experienced players in Chap, Teeny, and Skavi, they will see that as a perfect chance to pick up a nice elimination. Back on board there with Lushi, QB, and Loki, who, as you correctly mentioned, they do need that damage, and they were getting it with that easy elim earlier on. Now they're just staying inside of the storm. We talked about it a little bit last week as well, Taka. Lots of people playing in that storm, and it seems to be working for a lot of teams just to enable them to get to that late game as scot-free as possible.
It's so many teams also just being able to rely on the black market resources, being able to buy numerous amounts of gold splashes. In QB's instances, we've watched them kind of just huddling up together for that campfire play. But these dead side rotations, while they can be optimal, you still have to remember you're having to keep tabs on the surge damage throughout, right? And Chat, TV, Teeny wasting absolutely no time, just jumping straight from one engagement to the next. This time it's going to be Kifo who will be their next victim, and 3 eliminations now in tow for Chap's trio. It's definitely setting them up nicely. It's kind of
side of the map though, for YZY, Buzz, and all of these guys just on the edge. We have seen some fights in this sort of area. Of course, we talked about how Blaha, Mixon, and Combat could be potentially on the receiving end of some Queasy crossfire. But it does seem like they managed to evade that for now. Only one elimination for them. Maybe it was them that maybe took out Queasy earlier on. I think the bus path did go that way, so I can only imagine that would be the case, landing on top of the spawn, top of the bridge. But for these guys right now, their play style is going to be very consistent. It's going to be low ground. It's going to be making the most out of all of the games that they do make off spawn. Having that uncontested shining span is so important. Hopefully for them they can find some success.
just Sila fully previewing some of the woes that kind of take place when some of these teams are just navigating their way outside of the storm. Della, though, might even suspect that something is up here. Was not fully convinced that this building was abandoned by any means, and sure enough, Enix just running from Della straight into his next teammate, but he's at least going to take one with him, which is a surprising outcome. Still, it's not going to put too much of a halt here onto Bevies and Axe Force and Della. They'll be able to get that double revive off no problem. It's more so what Pump is going to have to decide to do moving forward, and he's not the only one. QB, Lushi, they've made their way outside of that campfire, now find themselves potentially caught up here in the mix with Fury's trio, and Peshka does have a lone elimination. Fury trying to add another one to the count. QB so incredibly low, just trying to hold the wall for as long as possible. He needs somebody from his team to try and back him up, but there's no reinforcements coming through just yet. Finally, Peshka is going to be able to shut him down. QB taken out of the conversation. Lushi soon to follow. Just too much trail behind here, and that's going to be the prime opportunity for Fury's team to collapse on. They're not the only ones, though, the third-party engagements in mind.
Look at this, though. Very, very sneaky from Zangi, Rickbor, and Zara. Looking to close on in here into this fight. Italians just trying to find any sort of angle to approach, but I think that the way that Craig, Fury, and Peshka fought that fight, it was very good. They didn't leave too many angles exposed for that third party. I think they could have finished it a little bit quicker. I'm sure they wouldn't mind with that, and they can actually get away in the truck there. So something that we might see a little bit of today. They are in play, so nice ways to sort of skip that mid game. This is what I was talking about. I would have liked to see them pushing Peshka into the box just to get this elimination a little bit sooner. That knock could have come through a little bit earlier, but of course they won't really care about that. They had the player advantage. They were able to easily roll on through. That's a really solid couple of knocks from those guys, particularly on a team that have been on a bit of a tear this game. Lushi, Loki, and QB, they've been playing in that storm, trying to get that damage as we were talking about earlier. So a little bit of a desperate attempt maybe for them to try and find some.
Scenic views, though, for Rick's trio at Pump Power. A lot of gold splashes that we saw Risk holding on to. Frixie as well, playing from that elevated position. Abdul and Boobas as well as YZY, they're just trying to make sure that they don't actually overexpose themselves by any means, Minnie. They are more than aware of the fact that there is a trio lurking just above them, but at least for right now, it's not something that they have to deal with. They are sitting just above the surge damage threshold, but 145 is nothing that you can feel comfortable with. So obviously Abdul just trying to lock in to another sky base in the distance, hoping, see if he can connect some shots. But if they don't find that damage soon, they could be in a world of hurt here.
Absolutely. UK lads, CZB, Nathan, Eclipse. Excited about this trio. A trio that I think have a lot of potential. Their skill ceiling, if you like, is still yet to be achieved. Of course, as I mentioned, all from the UK as well. So one of my favorite teams in the lobby, naturally. Looking good here, though. Just bang through Magic Mosses. No eliminations. They are only 20 above, so this is their focus right now. Trying to find a couple of extra damage tags. They don't have the optimal mobility either, so for them, they need to try and find that damage, try and maybe find a knock, some things to get them comfortably above that threshold.
Well, the way that they were circling from Mass Meadows, they might be able to jump right in to this fight that's taking place here at Brutal Boxcars. Zara, we knew they were going to be looking for damage soon enough here. Vitini and Chap, though, they're the last team that you'd probably want to encounter in such close quarters. But there's not very many other options. Zara knows that they're not actually going to be able to push out a Brutal at this point. Too many teams just local to the area, trying to hold them at bay. Vitini and Chap also know we've got more than enough surge damage. We just want to get a move on. We don't want to get caught in between two desperate trios. Vico, Veno, Flixie just chasing down Adrix, running for his life, but there's nowhere left to go. When it comes to one-on-ones, Vico has zero concerns, and Vic, unfortunately, he tries to back up his teammate, instead finds himself eliminated with him. But this is a big opportunity for Veno's trio, Mini, because if there's one thing Veno loves to do, it's ride the storm all the way through the dead side.
You do have to be careful here with this launch pad as well. Of course, with these assault rifles in the game right now, 100% accurate hit scan. So if anyone does catch them gliding in a sort of straight line, it could be an easy knock, particularly since I saw Flixie there was a little bit weaker on the white HP. So they've got to be extra careful when they're going about this. For Fredoxy and his trio, Pablo, Wingo, Chino. all rotating through pump. They're looking pretty good, though. They had that big surge base that we saw earlier on. Did get chopped down, but hopefully they were able to find enough sort of damage from that position. Seemingly doing okay so far. Just lacking in the whites as well. Main focus for them is just how can we make our way in, and this is a team that we talked about that did need a little bit of damage, only 85 above. Let's see the shots here from Eclipse, just holding those players. That position from them was so good, allowing them to find those extra tags that are going to keep them going through this game. Not going to find the refreshes there, but it's not going to be enough because they're still going to be below. They're still going to hop inside of these boxes as Eclipse does go down. It's all up to Nathan and CZB. The time is ticking, the clock is ticking for them to get this Storm Surge damage done, because it's starting to tick away at their HP as well, Taco. This is such a huge fight for them because it's a make or break, particularly now they have to try and get the revive. They're going to do a little bit of return fire, but it's not going to be enough as Eclipse does fall to Storm Surge. They're still 100 below. CZB is trying to do anything possible to hold on, but now the rest of the lobby have taken note of this fight that's going down. They've taken advantage of the fact that this team are getting tagged by Storm Surge, and it's looking only one way for this team, and I think they just got away with it there at the end. They still try and find some more damage. It's just not looking good for them. CZB does get a knock. I just don't think it's going to be enough.
It's just the situation that CZB and Nathan were left in. They go from one health box to the next, trying to crank up a little bit of height. They at least have mats to their name, but not much of anything else. CZB, he's going to immediately try and collapse onto another weakened trio, hoping to just find Aiden, Hardfine, Michael seem to be in a whole situation themselves, but that Siphon, at least gonna buy him a little bit of time, and Hardfine has absolutely no idea of what's actually behind him. CZB just coming in so late to the party. A big refresh. And at least while they're a duo, Nathan and CZB, they're gonna be able to keep trying to pack a punch, trekking forward. Somehow, some way, the lobby just no longer paying attention to them.
They are hanging on by a thread right now. Their HP is dwindling. The Storm is closing in as well. If they can evade anyone's attention here, then make their way in, they will have the heals to heal up at least somewhat, particularly looking at their shield. But there are players lurking behind as well. They're unwanted in terms of Nathan and CZB right now. This is a duo that we talked about before. I just don't know how he's done that. Another great knock. And they're just keeping on plowing through. They do make it inside of the zone. If they can just evade all this attention from everyone, they might be okay. But as I say that, CZB falls, Nathan falls as well. It was a valiant effort, but not quite enough from them in the end.
Big power trio, though, that's starting to enter the conversation. Malabuka, Walks, and Ping. They'll be more than happy to collect some of those leftover resources. At the same time, though, they've got to be wary of the fact that there is another team sitting on the opposite end of these walls, and these walls do not belong to them just yet. Malabuka, Ping, and Walks a little bit tied down here. They're strapped mini, but the problem is whether or not they can even break through where a lot of this congestion is starting to pool. They're gonna manage to make it up and over the hill, box up temporarily, just continue to try and restore some of the shield that's needed here for Malabuka, but they're gonna have to find a refresh. They can't continue in their current state.
This lobby is looking difficult in terms of the rotation, but look who's not looking in a difficult situation. It's Camiseti and Chari. These guys are in the perfect position just to hold everyone else. All the stragglers at the backside of zone still trying to make their way in. These guys can take advantage of it right the way up until that zone does close. This is a trio that always seem to be in the right position. Another great knock there from Chari, and it's hopefully going to be their first elimination of the game. The ability for them just to find themselves in the perfect position every single game is looking great. But look at this for a little high take there from Haijo, Kaito, and Turtle. It looks like they're trying to take both sides of the zones no matter where it goes. They should have it covered, but look at this. Veno down, Vico Flixie left to clutch.
This is not the circumstance that Vico and Flixie want to try and work with either. Only 2 builds remain. Vico knows that he has to confirm another elimination. They need second materials from someone, but it doesn't look as if anybody is willing to budge here. Flixie and Vico just all but exposed at this point, trying to continue buying themselves a little bit more time, a little bit more placement. What it seems so promising is now just the wave turning completely against them. Flixie tries to see if he can get the confirmation, Elin, but it's going to be the end of the road here in Game 1 for our Major 1 Finals champions, and tough scenes. Can't say the same, though, for Keto, Haijo, and Turtle. They're looking to set themselves up nicely here on the high ground, and nobody anywhere near.
Yeah, they had to set themselves up with a lot of materials earlier on. You can see the amount of materials they're expending right now. Really trying to make the most of it, really solidifying their spot on high ground. But what they need to make sure they do is not burn out too quickly. Find those knocks, find those refreshes. That's Turtle and Kaito's job. But at the bottom of the screen, Swizzy there going down. It's all up to Mustache, and no, Mustache falls as well. That trio was one that we were expecting. Frankie called it out. She wanted a game 1 win, but unfortunately for her and them, it's not going to happen.
Seti, Hari, and Cammy, though, they look like they're setting themselves up nicely to try and go for a counteractive push onto the high ground. Malabuka walks Ping. They're just caught in the congestion inside the mid and low. Finally going to look to try and break their way through. That knock onto Chap. The siphon going to come into effect any moment here for Ping, but instead, he's got to keep the job cruising. Can't afford to slow down for even a moment with the way that this lobby is just looking to collapse all around them. And they're not the only ones finding themselves in this scenario, Minnie. We saw this stage of the high ground, and Keto, Hydro, Turtle, they're doing a pretty solid job of holding on to it for the time being, but they don't have a whole lot of ammunition left. Hydro can only continue to suppress for so much longer. They're going to have to get up close and personal.
Look at where that zone pulls, though, all the way over the hill. So for the low ground teams like Seti, Cammy, and Chari, it's just going to be difficult for them to traverse their way up. They're trying their best. They're getting shut down by Kaizo, Haijo, and Turtle, who are doing an excellent job at doing that. But Cammy now left as a solo, having to solo clutch as much as he can. Mixon there just above him as well. So we got a bit of Polish action on that second height. Haijo, Kaito, and Turtle. Haijo does drop down, and they're the team that are on height now. They're the team that are trying to control the lobby as the zone does pull back down the mountain. But no, Kaito falls. It's fall damage for him. That's going to be a disaster for the other team up on height. Can they try and solo clutch this now? Or duo clutch, as I should say. As Ping walks Malabuka, try and take height. It's Ping on his own. Malabuka falls. It's all up to Ping. Or is it Haijo and Turtle?
It's Hydro and Turtle looking to shut down Ping. Ping might have bought himself a little bit more time, a couple more placements, but Hydro, he's actually going to be the next one to fall damage himself. And Turtle, now what looked to be such a recipe for success here on the high ground, it's going to be a lone Turtle trying to drop all the way down to the bottom, hoping to remain as concealed as possible. Still has a decent amount of heals, but Trexer, Cheatin, Robin, this might have just been hand-delivered victories for them. They're just going to continue to spray down. They know there's not a whole lot standing between them. It's only Mixon. It's only Turtle. They're trying to do what they can to prevent themselves from being fully exposed, but Mixon only has so much HP left to work with, and Cheatin is just so relentless alongside Robin. They're not even looking in Turtle's direction any longer, but they might have to backtrack here. Mixon finally going to find himself being collected by Cheatin, Robin, and Trexer, but this is all doomed from the finish here. The moment that we saw Haijo and Keto collapsing from the high ground, Mini, this story kind of wrote itself here for our Victory Royale winners in match 1.
Yeah, Robin, Cheatin, and Trexer, they saw that opportunity. They saw the door being open to high ground, and they took it with aplomb. Really nice work from them. But what's going on? High ground teams, game 1 of groups, it all seems to be crumbling down, and everyone seems to be falling at the worst moments in this group 1. So hopefully a lot of our teams will take note of that and hopefully not do the same. It was looking so good for Haijo and co, but really nicely played here from Cheatin, Trexer, and Robin, who just kept on applying that pressure. They had eliminations earlier on as well, so they were able to take advantage of that, and the zone pulling back up gave Turtle absolutely no chance.
I just have to get a look back on where things actually went so wrong here, but everything ended up going so right as well for Robin and Cheatin. So Des, what do you got to say?
I mean, this is a trio that clearly saw an opportunity coming their way. We could see that the guys on the high ground Turtles trio, it just wasn't going to be sustainable for them in the end, given that they were so low on ammo in the end. Takata, are you pleased for our first trio of Group 2 going through to next weekend's Grand Finals?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. This is literally the most stacked group in EU, and already off the bat, a lot of those kind of original trios we talked about only made it so far in the late game, but Cheatin, Trexer, and Robin did take home that Victory Royale. I believe they were landing Hopeful Heights, so that's a new uncontested drop spot on the map now. 11, it's gonna be good.
Yeah, I'm excited for them. You know, I look at all those players and they've all showed me signs at different times in previous seasons. And, you know, it sort of reminded me of sort of what you see in some eval games where you just sort of bide your time and your opportunity will come to go up there and ascend to high ground. But I think the cool thing here is like you said, Takata, right? Like, every time a win gets taken up by another team that isn't one of the titans of the lobby per se, a bit more pressure, just a bit more pressure every single game.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good team to do it, right? Because they're a team that, I think definitely deserves a place in the Major 1 finals. And, who knows what they can do? I think the sky's the limit for them.
Yeah, it was a huge game for Hydro Turtle and Kaido too, but they just held tight for so long that they used all of the materials. They were running low on what they needed to sustain height, so props to them as well. I'm sure they secured a bunch of placement, a bunch of points for that consistency, but they'll have to try again for the VR, Frankie.
Well, for many of our trios, game 1 was just a warm-up, so let's take a quick break and we'll be back in a few to discuss how it went for them. Welcome back to FNCS. It is Group 2, and you've just missed one game if you've joined us. But what a game. We saw some big names falling kind of at the start of the end game, 11-2K. And in the end, it was Robin, Texas, and Cheatin who took the Victory Royale at the first spot in next weekend's major finals. But I feel like we should talk about one trio who maybe people doubted going into Major 2 based on the Major 1 performance, and that is Cammy, Seti, and Shari. 11, yes, I took my time, but I got there in the end because this is a trio that everyone is actually, in terms of the pros, in terms of the lobby, is expected to do well. And you know what? I actually thought they were going to take it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was a point in this game where they definitely looked set up for success, but I'm not too worried about them. I think they played a really strong first game. You know, Chari doing what he sort of offers to this team, right? You know, in terms of just bringing that firepower, getting them a couple of limbs, getting them a couple of refreshes, which they need. But, you know, this is the part of the game that I think gets really tough for them, right? You saw a really good cohesion there to take the stash down, but then when you start to sort of get to these little moments where you're going uphill and it's a tough zone, that's when you often get caught out. So, good first game for them to cut by all counts, but, you know, those points on the balls will be valuable.
I mean, what I love about this trio is they're so good at minimizing the amount of risks they take to consistently get to those end games. But in terms of the leaderboard, here in, I mean, second, first place, depending how you look at it, Turtle, Kaido, and Haijo doing great. But, you know, Cammy and Seti sitting in 7th place, it's comfortable for now. I think as the day goes on, they'll slowly push their way up.
Well, why don't we talk about Haijo, Turtle, and Kaijo, because this is a trio that took and established high ground fairly early, start of the end game. They were looking comfortable up there until, oh God, it sounds like a cliche, until they weren't, guys. They're running out of ammo. And unfortunately for Haijo, things took a turn for the worse, Levin.
Yeah, you see here Haijo dropping down just to try and you know, get the loot from the elim there because you need it. He missed out on some of the match you saw there, which probably ends up costing them a bit. Because when you're on height in zones like this, it is just so tough to keep going because you're not getting that many elims and then like, you're not getting the loot from it, right? So they're so low on mats, they're trying to not build as much, they're just down to wood, and so you just make yourself an easy target.
Yeah, especially after getting chopped down, limited mats. It's just not really the recipe for success, but that comes with holding height so early on in the match. You use so many materials when you don't get the zone pulling back to you, and you have to keep going further and further on height and using more resources. In the end, if there's a full trio that's loaded up on mats from refreshes, they're gonna have a pretty easy time taking it from you.
Can I ask a real quick question then to Carter? Is there any point in trying to establish the high ground in Zone 8? Because I feel like we see so many trios and duos in the past not able to sustain their way to that victory royale. So I'm just wondering if is it worth the risk?
Well, it's definitely worth the risk. I mean, there's a lot of ways to counter it. You need to look for those refreshes. Even if you're on height, you have to be applying pressure in the correct areas. And I mean, if zones go on your side and you end up pulling back, not having to use materials, or even a big elevation change where a majority of the teams down below have to fight for their lives trying to get back up, I mean, it's gonna go your way a majority of the time. And even though you go down in the later segment of the game, you still got a top 2, top 3 placement. I mean, it's more than enough to make something happen in the long run.
Yeah, I think the boring answer from me would be, it just depends really, right? I think on the balance of things, if you're comparing it to like last season, Frankie, because we saw it a lot last season especially, it probably makes less sense now, right, than it did last season for a bunch of different reasons to do with just the actual meta itself. But I think we'll still see teams do it.
I think I'm satisfied with that answer. Veno, Vico, and Flixie, we don't see them in this first page. I don't know if we're able to see the second page of the standings. It was a little bit of a disappointing one for them. You know what? It's okay to have a slow game one, though, Levin, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be panicking. I think, you know, when you're a team like this, you know, when they went down, I had a comment in the green room. I was like, oh, not great, you know, and Takata sort of said like, yeah, but I got a bunch of elims, right? And it's like, that's what these guys will do, right? As long as they can just keep on getting, you know, good amount of elims in these games and getting relatively deep, they'll start creeping up and up. And one of these games, you know, will probably end up being the win, but, you know, it's not too bad of a start.
They're currently in 12th, aren't they, Takata?
They are. I'm not worried. I'm with, you know, Levin on this one. A lot of the top names aren't in that, you know, top 5 from the ones that you would have originally expected, but it's only game 1. We've got 4 more matches to be played out. You can qualify both from the VR and consistency. My question is, there's just too many big name trios to have them all qualify, you know? So who are going to be those ones as these matches goes on and those spots from the VRs keep getting claimed? You know, it's going to get interesting, so I'm excited.
Who's it going to be? Who's the upset?
Who's the upset?
Yeah,
who's not going through, you mean, Levin?
You said somebody's not going to make it through, so I'm asking you.
I mean, we don't know yet. We don't know yet, Levin. There's, like you said, Veno isn't in the top 10, Queasy isn't in the top 10, but, you know, it'll still happen.
I'm chucking you off the desk. You need to commit to the bit. Game 3, I want your predictions. Let's head back to Mini Miner and to Taco, please.
I'm going to the...
Mini Miner and Taco here, back at it again. I'm excited here, though, for game number 2, Taco. I think game number 1 didn't disappoint. There was so many different elements there that we had to break down. The Des did it really well. So many big-name teams that maybe didn't perform as well as we expected, and then some other ones that made it to endgame and had a solid game as well.
It's certainly a little bit shakier than what you would have expected for some of the more prominent teams that Europe has in store. But game 2 could always be the mix-up, so let's get to it.
Another important game here, game number 2. An opportunity for teams that didn't have the greatest start to make a bit of a comeback. Teams at the top to maybe extend their lead inside of that top 5. And if there is a team that's further on down, an opportunity to make it to the Major 2 finals is never over until that final game is done. So many opportunities for our teams here. And I think what's going to be interesting now, who's going to land at sort of that hopeful heights area. And for now, though, we have a big battle of Spawn Shiny Shafts. We saw this one taking a little bit longer last time, but it looks as though it's ADN, Hardfind, and Michael that are getting off to the greatest start.
And that's going to be a very fast back-to-back eliminations already collected for Hardfind's trio. And not only that many, but it's a pretty volatile 50-50 for some of these off-spawn contested moments. Tex also on the receiving end of some of those circumstances. Foxy Floodgate just continuing to kind of ramp up here as now Pradaj, remember, they didn't get the better end of this exchange last match. So hoping now to have a little bit of a bounce back, get some points established on that leaderboard if they're able to clean things up entirely.
The off-spawn, though, at Demon's Dojo here. Andalex already finding the first knock onto Pump right there. Really nicely done from him. This is where this team now needs to just close on in, try and find the final 2. Nice and quickly, they can get their game off to a good start then as Momsy closes on in. Yes, a lovely knock. And ends up making it a 3v1. And you can see that's why Enix is just deciding to get out as far as possible. Unfortunately for him, those Skyjumpers spotted him out. This can only end one way, and it's going to end in the way of the Frenchies who dominate there or spawn at Demon's Dojo. And it was all started by that Andalex picking up the Outlaw shotgun, getting up close and finding that one big tag to initiate that fight.
Big thing too is that you don't want to leave any survivors. Axe Force is going to have to sit and wait. Della, though, won't be able to make it out as Unzen, Ewick, they're going to be able to find themselves with a good opening regiment here at Kappa Kappa Factory. Take a look back at where things went wrong. Unfortunately for Della, absolutely nowhere left to run. And that's just the way things kind of spill over sometimes for teams. You might see them have success in one lobby, but then not so much going into the next. Expect that around game 3 is where we might see some of these teams begin to shuffle around, especially as the map opens up and we see more teams finding their seats in that Major 2 Finals battle bus. Haijo, Kaito, and Turtle, though, they were so close to victory in that first match, Minnie. To see everything kind of just take a tumble directly underneath them, the lobby just chopping them out so successfully. It can be a tough break for sure when you are that close to winning and then you still find yourself having to load up for the next battle bus drop.
Yeah, but it's looking like they're getting off to a good start here as they had a really nice pinch. Turtle getting another little angle. Couldn't really find too much damage there onto Andalex, so not necessarily exactly going as they would have expected or anticipated, but they're able to find that first knock onto Andalex, taking advantage of the French lads being split. Now it's all up to Momsy and Skyjump, who we know have played a lot together. You remember these guys from last season landing at Seaport City. I think it's quite fair for them now to decide to switch up the drop as Skyjump is just trying to find an opportunity here just to pounce, find a little bit of damage as his teammate Momsy is just getting mauled by Haijo and Kaito. Unfortunately for Momsy, he does go down, and it's now all up to Skyjump. You would have maybe said in hindsight he should have taken a shot, but not quite to be. But there's another team, another lurker up on top of that hill. So if this fight doesn't get finished quickly, Taco, things could be looking bleak for Haijo, Kaito, and Turtle as well. If they don't cover their angles well, this could be a 4th party.
Seeming like some short-lived victories as far coming into Demon's Dojo, but Haijo, Kaito, they're definitely aware of the fact that there is another team trying to enclose on their current position. They're gonna fall back temporarily and wait. They know Risk has that elevation advantage. It's Turtle opting to just fall back fully into the buildings here at Demon's Dojo. But Frixie, he's got other plans in mind. Unfortunately for Risk Trio, since they weren't able to actually get a huge advantage with the opening shots, Minnie, it seems as though they've elected to just let that one be. They're not going to revisit Demon's Dojo just yet. They might wait for that trio to actually push out instead.
Look at this, though. We saw Ewick, Unzen, and Dom having a really nice Bit of off-spawn fighting. Unfortunately, though, it's another third-party situation. It's Abdel, YZY, and Buzz who are able to hop on in here. Hop on in they do, and it's Abdel that finds that first knock and eventual elimination onto Unzen. And Ewe can manually breathe. Who's Domtat? They're going to have to try and disengage and try and pick up the pieces there later on. Maybe find a reboot if they can. As now we go on over to the hillside just outside of Crime City. Chap, Teeny, and Scavia, a team that we did get to see a little bit in that last game, but they were taken out in that sort of mid-game fight, weren't they? So I think they'll be looking to maybe change up their approach this game. You can see them building a massive surge tower. Zone seems to be a little bit more favorable for them. So maybe we'll see them play a little bit less aggressive in this game. So I don't think they had necessarily the best finish in that last game in terms of their placement overall. 8th overall, so not too great, but also not too bad.
But if there's one thing that Chaptini and Svi excel at, it's definitely close combat. It seems like they've spotted out a team trying to venture into the vault here at Crime City. Svi just circling the building, letting Chap and Teeny find those split angle approaches. V catches Fada completely off guard. Fada gonna immediately try to fall back towards Bendy, but now the trio fully split. This is exactly what Chap and Skeeve are after. Trying to see if they can get a closing shot. Bendy no longer going to be able to assist the rest of his teammates. Is faded off that Memnis grenade. Buys a little bit more time, but it's not enough to extend his lifeline anymore. Svi, Chap, and Teeny, they were hoping for a fight, and the fact that it rolled up straight into their POI of choice is probably the last thing that the other team had in mind. Still, it's going to be a nice position for them to sit in.
Really nicely done from these guys, as you say, just sort of isolating each individual, taking on one player as a duo, finding different angles, and that's what the best teams at fighting are so good at. For Twy, Obahalo, and Kovacs, they're able to find a nice first knock onto Siren, elimination as well. Voltiax, but no, Twy has to reload. It's Voltiax is just about managing to escape. He had to reload absolutely everything. Great shot onto Cool, full piece. Can he find another shot? He has to reload again, does Twy. He can't just quite find that final shot to take them out. This has been a little bit messy of a fight for these guys, but it's still in their favor. They're still trying to find those final two, and the longer this fight drags out for Taco, the more chance you give for those third parties, which we've seen so often in this game. The demise of a lot of teams, and Twy here just has to try and find that final shot. Doesn't quite connect as he gets to the wall. Looking from all other angles. So much piece control in this area as well. Voltiax doing a fantastic job at staying alive, but Kovacs is there to help. Taking out Cool. Now it's a 3v1 situation. The tides have turned in that fight. It's completely flipped. But you say could have been flipped a little bit sooner as Voltiax also falls.
It's the fact that Voltiax even survived as long as he did in the first place. That was looking like a 1 versus 3 for the longest time, just because there weren't any shots actually being sent back. Vico, Flixie, Veno, just collecting the early game surge in a very familiar way to them. Mustache, Swizzy, and Queasy, though, this time around, can be able to play as a fully intact trio from the start. No delays in their early game strategy just yet. And with the way that Mustache and Swizzy are currently based up, it is going to be very difficult for any teams in the surrounding area to actually rotate anywhere near the vicinity of Seaport City. Queasy also gonna take his time, just making sure to collect all the resources that are necessary. Also just take a completely separate angle approach. You can look at the opposite end of Seaport. Now you've got the north and south side covered fully as far as visuals are. And Queasy is definitely just hoping that he can maybe spot out Blaha in the distance.
Yeah, 2 separate surge bases, and from one surge base to another, this is quite literally the home for Seti. He's not going to be too concerned about this position. This is what we talked about in the first game as well, just having that position. I think the zone was definitely in their favor, of course, in that last game, so they were able to get in that really nice advanced position. And they don't seem to have as many heals inside of their big surge base yet, but I'm sure they'll be continuing to find more. I think just having this hill right next to them gives them so many opportunities, so much flexibility on how they want to play the game, that consistent play style that we expect from this trio. You know, they have what it takes in terms of skill and caliber to win a game, and they have got better at that, but team that we would expect to consistently make it through this lobby without fail, you'd imagine, because of the skill and the class of these players. But of course, as lots of people have mentioned, this is probably the hardest heat in terms of names. This is one of the most stacked heats, or groups, I should say, in terms of the names on the drop map and players surrounding. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see one or two upsets today. It's not completely alien to us. We have had it before. For Vexy, Pixovsky, and Isis right now, they're just taking advantage of all this metal, taking a hill for themselves as well. It does seem like this game's been a little bit more aggressive earlier on, but for them, they're just enabling themselves just to give themselves a little bit of surge early on here.
One thing that some of these teams are certainly discovering is that even if they are successful with some of these off-spawn fights, the introduction of third-party opportunities is going to leave you considering how you actually want to play around a successful off-spawn fight, because you can never really consider that things are going to be closed and sealed off. You always have to anticipate that there's going to be another team lurking, trying to, crouch, roll up on you when you least suspect it. And when you look at a team like CZB, Nathan, and Eclipse, you kind of touched on it in the last lobby here, Minnie, but definitely one of our trios that, they've had their moments of strong promise, but everybody's kind of just waiting for that standout feature.
Yeah, definitely. They have what it takes. They have the skill. Most certainly. They have the experience now as well in terms of playing in these sort of level of lobbies. And this is a trio that I'm very excited for. Also, two brothers in the same group, Eclipse and Twy. So I can only imagine what their household is like at the moment in terms of comms. Probably a bit hectic.
Who do you think gets priority on the internet?
Oh, I think they'll be fighting over it, I'm sure. But, they better have good internet in that house to sustain both players playing at this level. But I know they're both top-tier players, and they're very competitive as well. So I'm sure there's debates at the dinner table every night on who's the best.
Without a doubt. But I'm glad that we're actually taking a moment to see what's actually taking place here with Ping, Malabuka, and Walks. Also want to make note of the fact that this trio, I do believe, currently in Germany for a boot camp. So knowing that they're going to have a little bit of that zero ping advantage over some other members in the lobby, but it's also just the camaraderie, I think, that can be introduced when you have teams all syncing up together to play out these kinds of events. It should definitely make for a promising performance here today, but nothing is guaranteed when you're looking at a group that is as stacked as this one.
So difficult to navigate this sort of group when you have so many different players. I know Malabuka, Ping, Walks, they've been landing at Lone Wolf the whole season. They're still trying to figure out the best way to play it. I think they've been trying to claim some of the metal around that sort of drop spot, trying to almost increase the area in which they try and operate in that sort of location. So they're still figuring things out. As the analyst mentioned, they haven't necessarily had the best time as of late, but there's still potential for them to make that all good, and they won't mind if they make it to the Major 2 finals. Everything else is forgotten, I'm sure, so that's all that matters. And again, another sort of storm play here from Craig, Fury, and Peshka, who don't actually have eliminations. It looked as though one of them was down there, so I think it must have been Storm that knocked one of them out, rather than a fight, potentially, which is always difficult. And they're sort of third-partying here into the area of Malabuka. They're inside of a little bit of a battle right now as well. I'm not too sure how they're going to approach it, because we know how good this team can be, but I think they're aware of that third party just rolling on through. And the experience of all three of these players, the expectations on them as well, can't be easy to handle when it comes into these sort of lobbies. I like the way they're playing this. They're not just going all out here in this fight against Glubshy, Prax, and Gripey.
You always want to play with a little bit of restraint, though, when you know that you've got a team with a little bit of a bite back here, group-based team, and certainly not one that's just going to roll over, let themselves be eliminated all that easily. But both of these trios at Lone Wolf Lair are probably aware of the fact that there was a team lurking nearby. Unfortunately for Prax, the moment that he tries to actually leave the area, Walks being Malabuka, they're not going to let him just stroll out of here scot-free. Instead, they'll have to box up yet again, just burning through so many resources now for group-based trio, and that could pose to be a huge threat later on as this develops here, Minnie, because Lone Wolf Lair, Ping, Malabuka, Walks, they seem totally content to just let things play out here. They've got time on their side, even considering that they're the ones primarily in control of all the goodies in store at Lone Wolf.
Yeah, I mean, some of the better teams as well, they will sort of collate those heals or put them all inside of that one room so they know where the heals are. They know their own location better than the other teams that are sort of rotating in, so they definitely have the advantage there. Vico, Venom, Flixie, not necessarily the greatest start for them, but I share the same feeling as the analysts that this is not something to be concerned about. They're a team that have what it takes to win a game here today, even just qualify through consistency. I'm sure they won't mind whichever way they do it. And it's a team that still have been performing at this level, albeit slightly less so than we've seen last season. They were on a bit of a tear last season. They were by far the best team going into the Major 1 finals. Now things are a little bit different in terms of the landscape of the region. And I think a lot of that is to do with them sort of switching drops and maybe not having that same solidity that we've seen from them previously. But that doesn't take anything away from what they're able to do when it does come to these lobbies. They still are one of, if not the best team in the region. So expect them to qualify through.
Definitely stands out a bit, though, where if you were to ask the general public, hey, who do you think is winning this major? In the last season, it was by default almost always going to be Venom, Vico, Flixie, without question. But now there are definitely a good amount of people questioning whether or not they can continue to maintain their title as holding on to that Blade of Champions. And all these other teams, especially some of the teams competing here today, looking to try and steal that away from them. Chap, Teeny, and Svi, though, they've kind of been making their way through this lobby. It's been a little bit smoother going as well since that initial fight taking place at Crime City in familiar turf. It looks like it's set themselves up nicely for some of these later deadside rotates, but they're still trying to be wary. They know that their team's definitely looking to try and hold them down from hillside positions.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is another trio that are boot camping in Germany as well. So Chino, Pablo Wingu, and Fred Oxy, they are all sort of together, and I like the sort of content that they're able to get from that situation as well, being in the same area, in the same room in certain cases. So I'm excited to see what they can do on that lower ping. It's a team that is looking low on the storm surge damage right now. Sticks, Frixie, and Riquez, and I think it's Riquez. This is not an ideal situation for them at all because there's nobody nearby. They have to really try and get involved into a close-range engagement here. And this is why we see them just rotating back into the storm, trying to find some tags, which they do onto Adrix right there. They're gonna have to close on in because they need this damage desperately. This is now or never for this team, who've been trying their very best all game just to try and find damage. They haven't been able to do it. Now their first elimination is going to be good, but it's not going to be enough.
What looked to be like it might provide them a moment of relief has completely turned against them, though. They've drawn the attention of some of these other teams that are looking to fly more inwards towards this next zone. Sakei and Veek also keeping tabs. Teams using that launch pad, just paying the price currently. And this is damage that can always play a really big part, especially when you're functioning as a duo amongst a sea of trios here. Risk hoping for another shot, but he's gonna lose his teammate in the process instead. Stick's not gonna be able to be left standing here for much longer. Zara on the other side of this wall. But at this point, Minnie, it's just holding other teams at bay. Zara might have been successful at the start of that, but not sure it's actually gonna play to his advantage.
It's these fights that can really turn the tides in your game right now, as we see Nathan CZV Eclipse there finding some success in their earlier fights, and this is really what can set you up for the end game. You know, sort of 6th zone, getting that storm surge done nice and early. They're going to have so much loot there, so much heals in order to propel them through this game, but no, Ping is down. Malabuka also down. It's all up to Wox, who decides to dip. And for him, he's going to have to try and find this revive onto Ping, as Malabuka, unfortunately, has to watch on from the sidelines.
We're in 5-tick zone territory, though. Minnie, this is not helping any of these teams that are currently involved. Wox will at least find Siphon, so he'll be able to extend it just a moment longer. But he'll have to use the bulk of this Chug Jug just to get even close, and that's not even factoring in teams that would have been cutting him off in the first place. Pretty tumultuous start for some of these leading names here in EU, but their downfall might just be the upcoming for some of our other teams. V, Teeny, and Chap, they seem like they've got things figured out for the most part here. So they're looking to just try and establish solid position here, just outside of the primary focus, but Veno, Vico, and Flixie, they're not letting it go.
Triple sprays coming through from that team as we get to see some of the wounded teams that have been trying to get involved in those fights inside of the Storm. We saw what happened to Malavuka, Ping, and Wox, and somewhat to Nathan and Eclipse and CZB. Of course, CZB down, out, watching on. For these guys, unfortunately, it wasn't enough even to get them above the threshold, so they're still looking for damage. They're over-peaking, really, but they have to. They have no other choice here, Taka. They need to try and find as much damage as possible, because when you're a duo, what's most important for them now is just trying to stick together and play out the end game, but they need to also think about Surge as well, so it's not ideal. But look at this. We saw them earlier on. Really firm Surge base that wasn't going to get broken down in full built metal right next door to their drop spot. But the next thing they have to focus on, that max pull 8 zone, it's not going to be easy for them. It's Swizzy, Mustache, and Queasy. How are they going to rotate this?
But if you give Queasy practically max mats from 8th zone onwards, it's hard to imagine them not being able to translate that into a victory later on down the line. Still, never want to count your eggs before they hatch. They've still got to play things out the same as everyone else here. Cammy, Seti, Hari, they've managed to find themselves in a location where they could cut off some of these teams that are making the approach, but they just want to play it safe. They just want to play it calculated. They're not looking to take any unnecessary risk just yet. And Chap fully taking advantage of some of those players strolling in a little bit later towards these fringe points of the edge of zone. Peshka way back on the backside of the zone. Likely going to be picked off anytime soon here is Hydro, Turtle, Kaido trying to see if they could ramp up, but it's not going to be a success operation just yet. Height completely making sure to hold them off.
So many teams looking at them. They're the last team to sort of get into this side of zone. They have to use these old builds to hide and try and build their way in as much as possible. You see them using all their metal to make this happen. Much different situation to what we saw them in the last game, but they do live to tell the tale. They're okay, which is the main thing. They're still in the game, which can all go wrong sometimes. But for Zara, Zangi, and Rigball, these guys are looking solid up on height. We saw what happened in previous games where teams that were on height at this point did let it crumble. Are this team going to be different? Are they going to be able to pick up those refreshes, the materials, the minerals required to stay up? Or are they going to fall to the same fate? I'm hoping for them that they can just use this zone pullback to their advantage. You can see them just extending out in the metal, just trying to let that build out before they do so. But all the teams, you can even just see Chap here just looking up. They're keeping tabs on what height are doing, because one moment of slip, one slip up from height, and things can be all over. They're doing a great job at applying pressure. Teeny and Co, they're really struggling to get through this lobby right now, particularly since they're below on Storm Surge. They've got about 14 different things to think about at once, damage being the primary thought right now. But for Zara, Zangi, and Rigball, they're all the way up on height. They're dominating right now.
Just tackling one issue after the next, and while we saw High Ground committing a lot of material early on, and pullback is definitely going to be something that Swizzy, Mustache, and Queasy are keeping in mind. They're going to opt to tank a little bit of Storm. They've got Memphis grenades, though, and just finding an optimal position currently. That is until they have a chance to actually look back. Some teams starting to spray into their current builds. They will be able to defend themselves, though, and nothing really lost just yet, but back up atop. Rigbor, Zara, Zangi, they're gonna find themselves chopped, and Rigbor, a full trio wipe here. Vico, Veno, Flixie immediately wasting zero time. They're gonna ramp right up, happy to collect their prize off of that chop.
Perfect height retake here from Vico, Veno, and Flixie. They just mirrored height down below. They couldn't see them, the team up on high ground. They didn't even know they were getting chopped out, which is why they went down to full damage right there. Now the lobby is in the hands of Vico, Veno, and Flixie. And if there's any team that will take advantage of this high ground position, it will be them. You can just see them looking to try and find even more refreshes. It's Veno all the way up on top, Vico, Flixie, that are looking to try and find so many of this piece control, so much control of the rest of the lobby, and they can continue that plow through the rest because they're getting all of these materials which Veno can use to his advantage. This is one of the best duos right now at fragging out, playing together, and they're showing what they can do here on the top of the screen.
But look at what Swizzy, Queasy, and Mustache are doing. They're trying to control that ultimate front side low. They're actually managing to stay decently ahead of the pack, but still, Vico, Veno, Flixie, they're not trying to let up anytime soon here. Vico just hoping to confirm as many eliminations possible. Swizzy, though, he has fallen. Chaptini and Svi, we know what they're capable of, and they've taken them out. Queasy's trio no longer going to be left as part of this conversation. Teeny, Svi, and Chap now fully in control of the low ground, but it's Vico, Veno, Flixie, they're going to have to deal with eventually.
Yeah, they're still playing these sort of lower ground layers. Veno's still playing all the way up on top. We saw it was Cammy, Seti, and Chari that were trying to go up for height in just a moment ago, and now Fred Oxy goes down as well. That's going to be a huge number of eliminations for this team. They've still got so many materials as well. Veno's just been able to sit up on height, watch this all go down as he gets towards the front side of zone. This is where they need to try and look down at everyone else and just close them all out. Let the zone do the work, as this team now are just looking so on top. But no, Flixie falls. It's up to Veno and Vico.
But the way that the zone is pulled back, it didn't go over the hills. V, Chap, Teeny, they're going to be able to actually claim that front side still. Veno, on the other hand, 9 elimination. Vico with 4 as well. This team just has so much fragging potential, and Mixon might be on the receiving end of it. Blaha instead going to be that text target here as Vico collects them one after the other. But Veno, he's the only one left standing here, and Chap, Teeny's V, they're going to be the ones to win it all the way from that front side low ground. This is exactly what they were playing for, Minnie.
Perfectly played there from the low ground team. We thought that it was going to be Vico, Veno, and Flixie's time. We were highlighting so well, or so well, that they were fighting, and the ability to drop down. Vico and Flixie doing such a great job at it, but it was Flixie that fell there. The power was reduced, but the power was not lacking there on the low ground side of things. Teeny, Scavi, and Chap, a team that have been aggressive. They've been proactive in this game. We saw that fight all the way at the beginning of the game. They carried that momentum through. They picked up eliminations on low ground. They kept themselves going. And when the opportunity was right, when it was just down to Veno, they pounced, and there was no way they were going to let that one up. Really well played from our low ground team, and they are going to be in the Major 2 finals.
That should come as no surprise, really. Chap, Teeny, and Spee, a lot of people had them on their radar, but what does the Dust have to say about it?
I have to say that this is a trio that aggressed their way through the entire game, and I think that there's going to be a few people in the lobby breathing a sigh of relief. Yes, you kind of want Veno and his crew to be out of there, but these guys, the way that they were tearing things up, is going to be a relief to everyone concerned, Levin.
I mean, absolutely. I'll be honest with you, Frankie. I was kind of just prepared to just talk about Veno, Vico, Flixie and how amazing that game was from them. But they kind of did a lot of the heavy lifting for Chap, Teeny, and Scavi, right? Because they were playing so aggressively. They wiped out so many people. And so Chap, Teeny, and Scavi, who were playing aggressively themselves, to be fair, it wasn't like they were just passengers sitting by. But by the end there, it was just like they were just sat there and they didn't really have to do much. A lot of the hard work got done. Great game played from these guys, though, to just bide their time in that end game, stay front side, stay in good positions to capitalize.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to be fair, they did what they had to close out that match. What was important was in those last moments, they were still all up. They were close to each other. They could play together. Meanwhile, as Minnie called out, Flixie did get knocked down a little before Vico and Veno, leaving them as a duo. And honestly, they were probably just feeling themselves fragging out completely as they were getting so many elims. But, you know, in the end, they got a little ahead of themselves, and Chap, Teeny, and Scavi capitalized on that.
But, I mean, look at those boys, though. They are making it through to the major finals. I'm talking about Chap, Teeny, and Scavi here. And I'm so excited to see what they cook up in the lobby, because these are 3 names that actually I feel like the finals would feel bereft without. So I'm so glad that they've made it through. But I'm also very glad that Vico, Veno, and Flixie are still in the lobby. And we'll get to talk more about them and the other trios after the break. Welcome back to FNCS Season 2, Group 2. And guys, I'm not going to lie, things are about to get nasty because we have got to take a look back at Venno, Flixie and Vico and how they stole height at the end of Game 2. It was a dirty play and it was delicious, Levin.
Yeah, but you know what, Frankie? Usually people who like steal things, you know, are a bit, you know, sneaky about it. These guys had a bit of bravado about it, do you know what I mean? And I mean, look at that. Seeing all the health bars going down at the same time is so comical. We've seen them do this so many times in many seasons. And I think the most interesting thing about when they got on height, Takata, for me, was just how quickly Vico and Flixie got off of it. Look, like they take height and instantly both of them drop down to second height and are just like, it is time to eliminate everybody.
I mean, I don't think Vico Flixie even went on height. I mean, Venno got on up. They saw they got 3 eliminations. Vico Flixie said, all right, I was going to go down second height. Started basically box fighting every player on second height, getting elim after elim and just continuing that aggression. But you can see it paid off in terms of eliminations. Ultimately, they weren't able to get that VR, but with the amount of elims that they picked up, Levin, I'm sure they're happy with how it played out.
Yeah, like I said before the break, I was expecting for us to be talking about them winning the game. And so what I was gonna say was like, hey, look, they won the game, but a part of me is like, did you guys really need to do all that? Like, they were playing mad aggressive. And I guess now I can use that and say that kind of cost them towards the end, right? Like Flixie going down there. They got a bit unlucky with the zone pull. I think they like predicted that the zone would keep pulling across the hill, which it had it. They definitely do just win that game. But these things happen. Like you said, look at the leaderboard. They'll be more than fine with where they are now.
Can I also counter that, Levin, with the suggestion that they're just going for as many limbs as possible? Because once they've got the victory royale, then they are through. So it's more of an insurance policy at this point, especially as they did decide to drop down from the high ground.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, like, again, that game is still just a fantastic game. The kind of game that just sets you up to just go into cruise control for the rest of the day.
Well, let's talk about Queasy's trio, because this trio looked in such rude health, and we were all in the green room, Takata, weren't we, going, okay, right, they're going to go for their high ground now, they're going to go for the high ground take, and then it didn't quite come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, you can see here a 7th zone. They were waiting to see which corner that zone was going to pull towards. They were ready to play height if it pulled towards their zone, but it went to the complete opposite zone. They decided to try and play low ground, and as you can see, it didn't quite go their way. Swizzy ended up getting knocked. Mustache got knocked shortly after, and then Queasy playing as a solo can only make it so far, so weren't able to really get the zone pulls they were looking for, but overall, they had a pretty good match, and, you know, they're going to stay in 13th place right now, but they're still going to need a big one to take it home, Levin.
Yeah, towards the end of that game when they were on low ground there, it sort of felt like what it'd feel like to maybe watch like an alien try like acclimatize to human culture. It's like, you know, like they're on low ground, like, what, low ground?
What are they doing?
What do I do here? Like, you know, we're used to seeing them up on height is the point I'm trying to make here. Yeah, I definitely wasn't expecting to see them in that type of position. But to be fair, Mustache and Swizzy have so much experience, you know, winning on mid and low ground layers. So if they do have to be there again, I wouldn't be too surprised.
Yeah.
We've got 5 spots up for grabs in terms of consistency, as well as our 5 Victory Royale winners going through to the finals next weekend. And Mixon and his trio 11, they're in a really good position to qualify right now.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of these guys. They were one of my like biggest sort of sleeper teams last major, because every time I watched them, you know, at Shining, they looked really good. And this season, again, I think they're a really big sleeper team. They're the type of team that sort of just show up in end games, you know, and most people you ask them, like, oh, how did these guys get there? They won't be able to tell you. I have no clue, but they're there every single time. And they're very cohesive. They're very much on the same page. You see that as soon as they're not on the same page, that's how combat ends up getting picked off, right? Usually they're all sort of in the same box, you know, hip to hip, which definitely works in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, all they have to do is kind of keep it up. They remind me a little bit of how Camiseti Chari have been playing throughout the day. So, I mean, these are some of the trios that they just kind of have to keep getting to the end games, but that's what they excel at. So if they can keep doing that for the remainder, they should be able to make it through.
So, Takata, are you predicting a Victory Royale for Camiseti and Chari based on how they played the first 2 games?
To be honest, I'd expect more Victory Royale from a trio like Queasy, especially just, you know, based on previous play style. I think Camiseti Chari is more a trio that will qualify through consistency. They can win a match. It can go their way if they get the right pulls. Just everything's set up for them. But If not, I think they'll make it through consistency.
But I worry about them because then they're obviously trying to guarantee getting to the end game every time. This is the way that we expect them to play, but they're up against so many thirsty trios, Levin, that I worry about them getting blocked out from next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a possibility with this format. I think I would feel more confident about them getting a win maybe than Takata does, just because, you know, even in the games we've seen them, they have tried to play for high. The last game, they tried to play for high. It's just unlucky you got Veno in them up there, right? And so the more and more teams, I think, win games, the more and more, you know, I feel confident about them sort of getting that right win condition.
And do I feel confident about Taco's name? Yes, I got it right. So let's head over to Mini Miner and Taco.
Thanks so much. But hey, we're hoping to see some of the stars align for some of these teams that are falling just shy of that top 10 on the leaderboard position here, Mini. And not only that, but third time's a charm. You never know. And as looking at Veno, Vico, and Flixie, the fact that they haven't actually found their Victory Royale just might come as a surprise to a lot of people, but they're gonna have to just fight their way through it. It's something they've been doing all day long, and I don't think they plan on slowing down here in Game 3.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a team that will just keep plowing on, whether they win or not. They're going to be continuing. I mean, it just speaks volumes about how much we rate them and how good they really are that we're talking about this in game number 3. They haven't won yet. Oh no, what's going to happen? So I think we'll be talking about them being in the Major 2 finals at some point today. No doubt. But game number 3 here, this is a big moment for a lot of our teams, for a lot of our off-spawn battles as well. This can really be where things can start to turn, particularly since we saw Andalex, Monzy, and Skyjump having a really solid off-spawn fight last game. Let's see if they can replicate that again. It seems like it's a little bit more fair this time, though. We haven't got an immediate elimination, an immediate knock. As teams just playing each side of the drop spot so far. Taco not quite having that same aggression that we saw in game 2.
Can't say the same, though, for what's taking place here at Foxy Floodgate. Tex and Bendy will be able to clean things up nicely. So a big opening scene set and ready to play out here. Bendy with a little bit of a celebration even, and for good reason. When you are dealing with some of these 50-50 off-spawn fights, you can't really afford to miss out on more than one match at a time, especially not if you want to stay in contention, Minnie, for that 6th through 10th place on the leaderboard. Team still looking to try and just build as many points as possible so they can establish themselves firmly in that position, leading through the halfway point in today's games.
That's Comeback and Mixon already getting active. This is something that I didn't really associate with them at their drop spot, going towards the north side, taking a couple of eliminations potentially earlier on. So that's only going to help them in their search for that top 5 in consistency. For this fight, though, this is something that we have seen go in Ewick and Unzen's way. But looks like this time it seems like it's going to go their way again. They get that first knock onto Della, which is not ideal for that team. Bevies and Axforce, we saw them having a really good game 1 of Spawn. They aren't able to replicate it, though, as Bevies does go down to 50 HP. Lovely shots, though, onto Ewick to turn the tides on that one. And now you'd say that this is a duo that look like it may be on top right here, as Axforce is just still applying that pressure. Unzen trying to get his way around. Hits a great shot onto Axforce, but it's no chance of being enough, really, when you're just as a solo. And again, another team rotating through, and the wounded team of Axforce and Bevies losing Della. This could be dangerous for them.
And we've seen how these third-party circumstances can actually end up being hiccups themselves. Voltiac's gonna lose practically all of his shield outright here. Cool and Siren now looking to try and cut off Axforce. Great return shots, but Axforce, he'll still be able to scurry backwards. Siren just trying to see if he can finalize the pickoff. And sure enough, Axforce will fall. It's solely Bevies who might be left standing here. No, not even the case. Siren, Cool, and Voltiax have successfully won out the Kappa Kappa factory with that third-party exchange. Malabuka, Ping, and Walks, on the other hand, they've got more company than what they were bargaining for at the train, and they're not careful. The rest of the map might take notice as well. Adrix will be collected, though. No interruptions just yet. It's that medallion that Walks, Ping, and Malabuka are after. But it's interesting that a team would try a crazy switch of strategy. Avalo, unfortunately, gonna just have to fall back.
Yeah, you'd expect Malabuka to more be landing on that sort of lone wolf lair. I guess this is what I was talking about earlier. They're sort of trying a few different strategies off spawn, where they're landing, how they're rotating, where are they going to, and it seems like this game they want to try and go for that mythic pump. Of course, claiming that train, you get that every single game, and it spawns in the same place every single game as well, so they know that, and they're able to find that mythic pump as well as a slew of other loot that is in that area. For the Mars Meadows team, Chino, Pablo, Wingu, and Fredoxy, it's been all right for them so far. They've been okay. It hasn't been an amazing day, but they've been keeping in contention for that top 5 in consistency qual. I think Mars Meadows, with that black market, does have the potential in terms of loot for a team to get a win from Taco. I think it's got enough there for them. We just haven't seen that prowess yet in the end game. They've just had a couple of decent games. But if they can keep that up, that's absolutely no problem in this sort of format. You know, there's multiple ways of qualifying. We talk so much about victory royales, who's going to win. But if you can just slowly, consistently make your way through these games, like Combat Blatcher and Mixon potentially in a similar way, you'll be just fine. You'll be seeing yourself in the Major 2 finals. So it's interesting to see the difference in playstyles.
At the same time, though, you have to remember some of these teams, they're looking to make more of a statement, and especially in a group that's considered so high-tiered as this one. If you can confirm a victory royale in these kinds of matchups, it could be a huge confidence booster heading into the Major 2 finals itself. But that's going to be something that's just on the back of the minds here for Cool, Siren, and Voltiax. They're now dealing with yet another team at the Kappa Kappa factory. They've been consistently moving their way through Kappa Kappa, happy to collect their third party for early surge damage. Granted, it's not necessarily an easy position to actually push off of, because you're just inviting other teams to then hold you at bay, hold you on that fringe position of the map. And something that Merstash, Sweezy, and Queasy also do rather excellently is try and essentially pick off Blaha, Mixon, and Comeback over by the Shining Span. You can see these shots just taking place, being fired back and forth here between the bridge and Seaport City. Very familiar sight, and with all of the shield potions and stuff that Merstash tends to gather. But Merstash definitely trying to keep tabs on those teams over by Rolling Blossoms Farm, sending shots his way. It's Fredoxy on the other end.
Yeah, they'll be more than happy doing that, just keeping up that Storm Surge damage and ensuring that they can sort of stay in that area with not too much trouble. For Elise, Spari, and Roman, these guys are just sort of boxing up right above the, I think it's that sort of black market area in Magic Mosses. No, it's more to the north, actually. So the team, Sangil, Tidy, and Julie, who have actually taken control of that Magic Mosses black market. They do have the loot from it as well. How they go about this fight is going to be interesting, because they are now down to a duo. Kami, Chari, and Seti. Levin mentioned it on the desk. They did try and go for height last game. And I think it was Seti that got shut down by Veno. So you can see what they're trying to do. You can see the way they're trying to play these games out. And you can really just see that they're consistent as well in terms of their in-game performances and their Divisional Cup placements. Top 9 in all of the Div Cup finals. I mean, even NA. They've been playing a lot of NA Cups as well. The NA Central Divisional Cup finals. They've made every single finals in that region as well. So no matter what ping, no matter what circumstances, they're still putting in the grind. And for Della and Bevies, they've lost Axe Force, which is strange because, of course, Della was down earlier on. So they've been able to escape that difficult situation off spawn, and now it's up to them to try and get the reboot.
This is just Della out in no man's land, though. And even in the last lobby, we saw how many teams were getting kind of caught up in that fighting zone territory. Cool, Voltiac, Siren, still trying to fight things out here at Kappa Kappa. Finally, Siren gonna open the door here. Abdul will fall, but Cool, just underneath the underbelly of these builds, reuniting with this team, Boo Boo and YZY. It almost appears as if they want to continue this fight despite being down a teammate. But it's more so just the escape factor that they had in mind. This route's gonna get cut off though by Cool. Still, don't want to consider anything as a total freebie. YZY gonna at least force Cool to come to a slight bit of a pause here. Hopeful Heights just stuck. That's what it seems like for both of these teams. There needs to be a conclusion now rather than later. And Siren, he's not careful. He's gonna actually find himself as the target. Thankfully, he does have 2 other teammates to back him up, so that will be a confirmed elimination. YZY, though, the fact is he's also just lurking. Things are a little bit more messy, though, than what Cool and Voltix have been after initially.
Yeah, definitely. I think they would have thought that YZY would have just run away now, so YZY just opting to sit here. It's not actually a bad play at all. I think they would have just thought, yeah, he's run away. That's not a problem at all, but for YZY, he's going to be able to potentially pick up a reboot with that reboot van right next door. So nice plays from him. This is something we saw earlier. Glubshy actually trying to lurk in this sort of area. Unfortunately for Sanguild, he's lost both of his teammates. As I was saying, this is what Glubshy and Frax and Grippe do very well. It's just that sort of lurking around these areas. So many trees as well to take cover from. And there's just so much opportunity for Storm Surge damage. And it's a very experienced team as well. Grippe was in the last grand finals as well. The Major 1 finals. Placed 13th. Not a bad performance from him whatsoever. But for Sanguild and company, without the company so far, things are looking okay. Because he's not getting aggressed at the moment.
There is just so much happening. And then nothing at the same time here. All these teams in the surrounding area risk going to be... That is, what, 24 splashes that we're looking at right now? Sitting on 1 trio. So we know who's already made it inside of the Backwoods
Even
Black
more?
Market. And yet, it doesn't seem as though Styx and Risk are actually going to be able to move out of this position anytime soon here at Magic Mosses. But I'm also just thinking about a team like Camiseti and Hari, who can definitely just keep notice of everything that's taking place. All those teams, all the shots being fired, they're bound to be hearing that. And they're in a prime position to just cut through the teams that actually start to rotate closer to them. But also teams are probably going to keep in mind that Camiseti Hari, they love basing up on top of that mountain surrounding the base tunnel and brutal boxcars. It's just the fact that you have to question, is this really a safe path to move through, or am I going to be cut off sooner than what I'd expected?
And it's teams that are in these sort of surge bases like CZB, Nathan, and Eclipse that will just cut people off when they are making those rotations. You can see them very split here as well. This does seem to be the way that teams are going about their Storm Surge if they're trying to play that more consistent style of gameplay. Hasn't been necessarily the best day for these guys so far, so they're going to need to find a little bit more success. And likewise ready for Ping, Malabuka, and Wox still in the lobby. A team that we know how good they can be. We know how good they are when it comes to these sort of lobbies. These are the lobbies that they thrive in more often than not. And they're really trying their best here to change the way that they're playing way deep inside of the Storm. Of course, a much different sort of early game to what we've seen from this team in the past. Just using those launch pads to try and make their way around as much as possible. I think they did take advantage of that early fight, didn't they, at the train? So they have that flexibility now to play this more sort of slow and consistent style of gameplay at this beginning stage of the game.
It's just evident that the black markets and vaults have really made it possible for everybody to do their best Veno impression. It is really what it's seeming like. I mean, you've got a handful of players that are always notorious for opting to play the dead side, opting to just play from deep inside of those Storm positions, get the more favorable rotates after they build their surge early on. But when everybody's doing the exact same thing here, Mini, can definitely cause some problems. Dead side starts to look a whole lot less so, and well, X-Force, Bevies, you would think that they would be out of the thick of it by now. Instead, caught with YZY's team at Hopeful Heights. Both sides desperately needing a little bit of surge damage, though. They want to keep things moving here in this third lobby. And YZY, Abdul Ubu, they've yet to find their opening shot. Almost leading themselves out slowly, considering that they need to strike. They've got to make these cleanups be quick, but it's anything. Just doesn't look like anything is going to give here.
I think Delarax Force and Bevies do need these knocks, the damage, because they had to do a couple of reboots earlier on in the game. They're going to lose that early damage that they got from that off-spawn fight. Bevy's connecting with a beautiful shot there into Abdullet again. With another great connection onto Buzz. That's how it's done. And it's now just up to Della and Bevies as Axe-Force does fall. YZY is the target. It's a 2v1 situation, but not all players have that much HP. It's only Della with the shield, but the white HP is dwindling, so it's an even playing field in terms of health. It's whether YZY can connect with one of these shots as Della hops on in, but no chance for YZY. Della and Bevies are the surviving players from that fight, and they're going to run away as the victors. Crucial Storm Surge damage for them. They're going to have to pick up Axe-Force, which I think is going to be their third reboot of the game. We get to see this beautiful double knock here from Bevies. First one under the ramp and the second one through the window. Peekaboo, and he's back to the lobby.
Just knowing that there's still such an uphill battle to deal with. I'm not going to say it's impossible by any means, although I'm sure that they would have preferred to have won out that exchange without having lost a teammate in the process. Tidy, Jewel, and Sangil. It looks like they might be circling their way through Magic Mosses, but they're fully aware of the fact that they've got a team kind of trailing from behind them, a little bit more north. That might just be the play, though, for Jewel. Gonna try and open things up. Instead, eats way too much damage in the process. At least this campfire is gonna buy him a little bit more white HP than what he needs. Tidy, on the other hand, hoping to see if he can find a separate angle, but there is no opportunities here for Tidy and Sangil just yet. They know they've got to keep things moving forward. They can't afford to get caught in the storm for this long, especially being aware of the fact that there's teams that have already gotten ahead of them. They're already based inside of the zone.
Yeah, the zone does pull in their favor, though, so they shouldn't have too long of a rotation. Kaito, Haijo, and Turtle making the most of that. Interesting sort of position for them to be in, just on the edge here. They are above, though, so they're looking pretty good in that department. And Vico, Flixi, and Veno are making their way inside of the zone. We saw them have so many eliminations in that last game, and they've got their sights set on even more. They haven't got any so far, and you can see why on the right side of the screen. No Storm Surge damage, at least not enough to be over the threshold. So this is going to be one of those chop situations, potentially, where they try and chop this team out. As Faded and Co have to try and drop down. They know what's coming. And for Vico, Veno, Flixi, this is where they need to do as much damage as possible. The analysts broke it down at the beginning of the day. This fight, the way that they fight is so important. You can see Veno just applying as much pressure as possible, nice and up close. Vico, Flixi looking at other angles, but no, it's not successfully, unfortunately, as Vico does fall. It's all now up to Veno and Flixi, as Vico does get finished as well. So now it's turned into a very difficult situation for this trio, who now have a disadvantage in terms of players. There needs to be a big connection from one of these two. It's not going to be from Flixi, who does fall, but it's going to be Veno who connects with another shot, which gets the knock, and hopefully now for him, he can turn the tides in his favor. But it's going to have the experience of Veno to solo clutch here against a very formidable team. It's Bendy on the other side of it. Great shot from Veno. Another shot onto Faded. Now Veno's looking like he's got a bit of confidence here. He's got the upper hand in this fight. 73 is going to be enough to do some damage, but not enough to take him out, as Bendy still tries to get inside of the box. They're still trying to stay aggressive, as Veno's still trying to heal up as well. He's got so much piece control, Veno. It's not going to be enough to find that shot. He does get the siphon from Tex as well, so huge turn for Veno. He just needs to get this next knock, but no, the other team are able to heal up Taco. Things were looking so good for him there.
But the time has already been spent. At this point, it's just Veno looking for elimination points, if anything at all. Faded and Bendy, they might not even allow for that to take place. They've done so much damage towards how this match 3 will play out for Vico and Flixi, and now they're just gonna leave out like bandits. Granted, rather injured themselves, but it's just the fact that they're at least a pairing. They're not left in that solo kind of clutch situation. Veno might be able to make something happen as far as additional placement points are concerned, but right now they're probably just happy to know that they are rather solidified in that top end of the consistency side for the leaderboard.
Tell you what, there aren't many players in this lobby that would be able to, as a solo, force a duo to run and disengage from a fight like that. Veno doing absolutely everything he could to stay in the game, nearly taking both of them out as well. So again, just highlights how good Veno really is in those box fight situations. Every single one of that trio, any of them in that situation, and I'm sure the team would still run away. And we can see that very team right now. Bendy and Faded, of course, now just down as a duo. Just shows how important it is just to keep applying that pressure when you're in that solo clutch situation as Veno was doing. He wasn't boxing up and backing down. He was connecting with shots, being on the front foot, getting aggressive, using the piece control that he had. And it's worked out in his favor so far if he's still in the game.
Malabuka, Ping, and Walk saw that unstoppable medallion just left behind on the minimap, but Sangil, Jewel, Tidy, right now, they're just focused on trying to keep their heads above water, essentially. Lone Wolf Lair, just way too much traffic than what they had initially bargained for, and they're gonna dive right in. Malabuka will fall, but with Wax and Ping directly behind him, hopefully they'll be able to go for the double revive. They've at least got one knock in their favor as well, and Jewel, the only member left standing from his trio. Ping's gonna actually focus in on just making sure that he brings Malabuka back into the fight. They know that they've got to keep things moving here, but they still want to make sure that they collect on everything that they've gone through the efforts of in the first place. Jewel, finalized, the body loot brought into action, and Ping walks Malabuka. Got a moment to breathe. In comparison to where the rest of the lobby stands, though, they definitely got to keep their wits about them.
Nicely done from that team. They're on that low ground, so they weren't getting focus from everyone else. Who is getting focused in the moment, though? It's Comeback, Mixon, and Blaho, and in a difficult situation. Not only are they getting looked at by so many people, but the storm is closing in behind them as well. These splashes are going to have to come into play. And this is going to be a really, really important rotation for this team, who are really high up in the standings. I believe they're our first place consistency team going into this game, expending so many materials to make them look as strong and as healthy as possible, even though the materials might not suggest that. You can see why they got in this situation as well. They got held up in this fight. They had to hit the revive. You can see them taking out a good number of players, and you can see at that very moment the storm starts closing in. So it's so difficult for them to then recoup, recover. They can use those materials now to claim a little bit of high ground, hopefully.
It's really that full collection of materials, all those siphon mats, that'll definitely play a pretty big part in terms of their success throughout the course of this endgame. But Cammy, Seti, Hari are in a whole world of trouble here. Seti gonna actually catch Siren completely off guard, just way too fixated on the target directly in front of him. A really great flank opportunity that just opened itself up there. Mustache and Swizzy, though, this is the kind of terrain that you would expect this team to be in, taking over the high ground. And whether or not they're going to be able to command control of it is probably going to dictate the outcome of this game here.
Yeah, crucial thing about this game is they boxed up in that last game and they didn't get 8th zone. This time 8th zone's pulled in their favor. They've actually taken advantage of that now. They've been able to box out all the way up on high, claim that position, which they weren't able to do in that last game. So this game's looking so much more promising for them in terms of that early positioning in this end game. And this could be their final chance to, or their chance to finally get that win, I should say. As Wox, Ping, and Malabuka still in the game. 6 eliminations so far as well, finding themselves in a nice position just on that sort of second height layer, just below Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache, as the rest of the lobby continue to look up. And I think it was Eclipse there trying to build up as well, so Queasy might have another problem on his hands, as they do. It's Nathan, CCV, and Eclipse who try and take it off them, but it's an immovable object, that high ground. And as I say that, it all comes crumbling down. But luckily, this team had the experience. They saw that coming. I think they're going to be able to hold on to height here, Taco, but albeit with a little bit less materials than they would have liked at this stage.
Squeezy, he's just got a ball out of control at this point. He's already got one knock, so that's going to definitely give him enough firepower to keep going. But Seti and Hari, they were actually the ones taking note of that high ground. They were the ones actually trying to chop them out. Malabuka, Ping, and Walks from secondary height position. They've been holding things down slow and steady, but Swizzy, Queasy, Mustache, they're the ones who are in the driver's seat currently. They're trying to control the flow of this lobby. Malabuka now trying to see if he can tarp up towards the high ground, but Ping gonna cost a huge chunk of his shield in the process of moving upwards, trying to follow behind his teammate Malabuka. They'll be forced to come to a little bit of a pause here. Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache, though, they are relentless. This is how height is meant to be played, though, just refusing to budge or allow anybody to threaten their position.
Nobody can take over that high ground control right now. The rest of the lobby's just too focused on getting over this massive hill that's going to be in their way. Nobody's looking on up. You can see Cammy, Seti, and Chari doing that exact thing right now, looking down. They're looking to this low ground section of the map. They're trying to take out Lucy, Loki, and QB. Loki does fall there in the beginning of this fight, and this is what this trio needed. They needed that refresh. They needed those materials to continue their low ground dominance. We have one of the iconic high ground trios in Queasy, Mustache, and Swizzy, and now one of the most famous low ground trios in Seti, Cammy, and Chari. Who's going to come out on top here?
Ping, Malabuko, Walks. They've just been so innocuous so far. Nobody has really paid mind to them, and they are just lighting up these teams trying to actually break through on that front side low. Finally, Ping, Walks, Malabuka, they're going to get their move on. They want to ensure that they are maintaining this front side position here on the low ground. But Swizzy, Queasy, Mustache, they might drop within a moment's notice. They can tell that the lobby is smothering itself underneath them. And Swizzy, he wants more, but Ping, he's going to have to answer first to everybody that's pulling in behind him. Blaha mixing combat, knocking on the other side of these walls. But Blaha, he can't take it just yet. Ovalo and Kovac's going to slow him down.
They took him over there inside of that front side of zones. That's a really nice position for that trio. Looking up to height, though, it's Glubshy and company that are trying to take it off. Queasy and Co as well, as now Ping and Malabuka, they're left down as a duo. Of course, Wox goes down, and they're fully out. It's over for them in this game, but a solid game overall. Queasy and Swizzy all the way up on height. Mustache finding eliminations on low ground as well. The materials are going to be enjoyed, but not quite going to be enough to continue their high ground reign. They just got to keep spraying on down, applying as much pressure as they can, and that's exactly what they're doing right now, as it's all going crazy on low ground. Cammy manages to find Kire right there, not without falling is Chari, and Cammy and Seti now, the iconic duo on low ground.
Realistically, though, Mustache, Swizzy, and Queasy, they're the healthiest looking trio in this lobby currently, Mini. Cammy, Seti, fighting for their lives, fighting to try and maintain some composure on the low ground, but it's not going to be enough. Cammy is the lone wolf trying to continue this dream forward, but Swizzy, Queasy, and Mustache, you might as well feel the victory lap coming into play here. The heal off might have been enough if Cammy had a little bit more of the chunk to work with. Unfortunately, though, stuck in the back of zone, scrambling around, trying to see if you can find any sort of white heals. But we knew how this one was going to pan out from the get-go, Mini. Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache, as soon as they were able to get that confident control of the high ground, they just maintained it all the way through.
When Queasy is up on high in that 8th zone, there's no doubt in your mind, there shouldn't be any doubt that he's going to go and take that game. They had materials when they didn't. Mustache dropped down, picked up materials, picked up the refreshes, and so many times this weekend, last weekend, we saw teams building up to height that early on and ending up crumbling, ending up falling, going down to full damage. But that just shows how it's meant to be done. This is how to win a game on high, and who better than Queasy, Swizzy, and Mustache?
Definitely bound to be very happy with their performance. And this is, again, just something that's kind of expected. When you see this team in that position, you have to expect that the outcome is going to be converted to a victory royale. So huge congratulations to Swizzy, Queasy, and Mustache. We'll see you in the Major 2 finals, but the desk might have more to say.
Always got so much to say. Thank you very much, Taco and Mini Miner. It was inevitable, really, that Queasy's trio was going to take a victory royale. The question was just when to Carter. The conditions were perfect, and they took it by storm.
Yeah, it was only a matter of time. You said it yourself, Frankie. Game 1, doesn't matter. Game 2, they played for that high ground in 7th zone, waiting for that half and half pull. Unfortunately, it went to the complete opposite side, but this game, they said, you know what? We're not even going to try and predict it. 8th zone came through. They walked themselves right into that zone, built up. Not a single trio contested them, and then at that point, they had high ground. They played it by the book. They were able to overcome the contestations from the trios that were trying to retake it, and ultimately, Levin, they just did what they know them best for.
Yeah, Frankie, earlier you asked, like, a team's gonna, still play for height in 8th zone, and I should have just said, yeah, if you're Queasy, you can, right? Because that is just what they show they can do. And you mentioned some of the different teams trying to take height from them, right? There was the temp, there was a temp zone height take as well that came through from Glubshy's trio. And, we have the lovely little drone shot that we watch here on our broadcast, so we can see it all clearly. And I was commenting, I was like, yep, look, Glubshy team's right there. They got to be careful. Those guys look stacked. And they would have been more aware of it than I ever was. And I have a drone view to see it, right? So, they handled that really well. When those guys start to build up, they wiped them out the lobby. And Swizzy, Queasy, and Mustache just made it look so easy, as they always seem to do from high.
When you are the high ground king, Queasy, you always know who is below you and what's right in front of you. And in this case, it was the Victory Royale. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking more about Game 3. This is a public service announcement. We did mention this at the top of the show. We would like Cole to respond to Courage, and we'd also like you guys to get your tickets to the Gallon Centre, because on May 10th the Pro-Am is taking place. You might have seen some of our pros in game rocking the original Axe of Champions. The likes of Vino, Queasy, they're all going to be there playing with some of the best creators in the world, not just Fortnite, on the 10th of May. And if you get your tickets, you will also get to rock that Axe of Champions. Yet another reason to go. Levin, I saw your face light up.
I always dreamed of having the original Axe of Champions, and now I will, but not for the right reasons.
Keep dreaming.
No, it's a very much a right reason. Now let's talk about what went on in Game 3, because there was so much to love there. Not least Ping really just striving and popping off for his trio, because Malibuka, Wox and Ping, they have to be in a really great position after that, and they are currently in 8th spot. 11. I actually thought they were going to be higher, to be honest, because they were really, really popping up in the Olymp feed.
Yeah, I mean, Ping sort of goes a bit... unnoticed in this team at times, understandably, right? You got the legend Malabuka, you have Wox, and who gets bigged up for his firepower and his pop-off ability all the time. But Ping has it in his locker as well, and he decided to grace us with it here in Game 3, Takata.
Yeah, I believe it was Tidy and his trio that tried going aggro against them leading up to this endgame, and then Ping Wox were like, yeah, we're not going to let that one slide. They pushed them right back, picked up all 3 eliminations, and as you see, as this late game continued on, they just kept fragging out. They ended with like a total of 11 eliminations, but like you were alluding to, Frankie, why aren't they that much higher? I mean, the previous match, they ended up going down in 19th, so they did get this big pop-off match, but previously, they're kind of missing out on that consistency. But, this is kind of that fire they needed to continue pushing on forwards.
Well, Combat, Blacker, and Mixon, I think they've been really consistent if you want to talk about consistent trios who also are fragging, because Levin, they were also a team that was really challenging those lower layers in that game.
Yeah, no, I think they've clocked the lobby, right? They just seem to be there every single game. They have it figured out, they have it laid out to get to end games consistently. And sort of like I mentioned the last time we talked about them, in these end games, they are just so great at just being on the same time. Look at them, they're all stood on the same cone nearabouts, right? Like, they are always glued together. And when you are, this is just basic Fortnite fundamentals. Like, when you are so glued together in end games, it's gonna be hard for you to not be successful in these type of lobbies.
Yeah, I mean, they literally got 3rd place every single match today, Levin. Every single match they've got in 3rd place alongside a good amount of eliminations. I mean, they're playing just like Cammy and Seti, but getting more eliminations and better placement. And you can see that on the leaderboard. I mean, if you take out the 3 trios that already qualified from that Victory Royale, 1st place, Comeback Baja Mixin. 2nd place, Cammy, Cherry, and Seti. I mean, they are incredibly consistent.
I love the fact that Seti, Cammy, and Chariot are just playing to type right now. I love that Cammy's always the one left and always sneaking further and further into the top 10, Levin.
Yeah, and this is another example of where, like, they are just so close, right? I love this play here, right, to sort of go in on this team. You saw Charlie was just holding onto the wall, right, ready for his teammates to come through and replace it for him. I mean, the cohesion on this team is just almost next to none at times. Again, so close. How many times are they going to just be there, just almost there, and it not quite go their way towards the end? They just ran out a bit of gas. And like Taco, I almost said Takata there. I'm almost like you, Frankie. Like Taco rightfully mentioned, a bit more heal off, and maybe Cammy can just get it done, but there just wasn't enough left there.
Let's go way back in time now, it feels like, to the mid-game of game number 3, because Venno was sadly left on his lonesome. But you know what? He put on a show to Car. This 1v3 was everything.
Yes, he did. You can see Vico got absolutely beamed out of the sky, floating in the air, touched the ground on his knees. Flixie also fell shortly after, and Venno was kind of left in that tough situation, the 1 versus 3. But I mean, you should have seen us reacting to this fight. He was a sliver away from getting the job done, got the initial knock, put a good amount of damage on the remaining 2 players, but in the end wasn't able to clean it up and got eliminated. But I mean, Venno is still leading in eliminations compared to every other player in the lobby. Venno has the most eliminations, so it's only a matter of time before they get a bigger match.
Are they going to win the next Victory Royale, especially as Queasy is now out of the lobby, Levin?
I mean, you definitely would say that their chances have gone up more and more. I think the tough thing is, like, they're just having some of these mid games where, like, zone pulls a bit far and they do seem to struggle here. So, hopefully the zones are favorable to them.
Well, we've got 2 more games of Group 2, so let's see who's going to be taking the next spot in next weekend's major finals. Taco and Miniminer, take it away.
Thank you so much, Frankie. This is where things really start to get real. We have 2 more games remaining. Crunch time for a lot of our teams here as well, because now, Taco, you might be looking at your team, you might be thinking we need to get a win at this current point to have any chance at making the Major 2 finals.
Right, and shamelessly, I think a lot of people know where I might have stood as far as watching the games take place today, but Game 4 is still on the horizon, Game 5 shortly after that, and for teams outside of that top 10, they're going to look to try and crack their way through.
Crucial moments for everyone at any stage of the leaderboard. A big question I want answers to now is who's going to land at Seaport City. I think it's more than likely to be Momsy and that trio, because of course they have been landing there. They have that experience. I think they might have even said that that's what's going to happen when Queasy gets a win. So they were almost preparing for that, if that's what they've ended up doing. We'll get to have a little look at that in just a moment. And these are some of the fights that we saw earlier that are now starting to dwindle and fizzle out, because some of the teams that were contesting Taco, they've sort of moved. They've decided, okay, there's a bit more opening now, or a bit more of an opening in certain different areas. So for Tex and Faded and Bendy, we saw them in that big fight against Veno, Vico, and Flixie, which you'd have to say, came out on top of. Hopefully brimming with confidence now, and having an uncontested drop spot to boot, hopefully they'll be able to find a little bit more success now in that later stage of the game.
They're not the only ones that are going to need confidence. Continuing through Particle and Kire. A little bit of a sticky spot here with Hardfine's trio. And Haruko knows there's at least one, maybe two players close by. He's going to try to wrap around, see if he can catch an off angle. Instead, Haruko, he doesn't get the knock he needs. He'll find himself being turned upon. Still, this might go in favor of his trio, and it's only one surviving member currently, as Aspas will manage to get the double revive off onto Haruko, but this is a very difficult position now, because the last thing you want is to bank everything on that Game 5 performance.
Yeah, really, really difficult. This is interesting. Saw Bevies actually say that he was going to go to Seaport just now on socials, but they've decided to stick to what they know and what seems to be working for them as of right now. As Ewik is down, Unzun is also just cracked at that current point. So for Bevies, Axforce, and Della, they're using this as an opportunity to come on through. Beautiful shots there from Bevies, using the Infiltrator, the sniper shotgun in a way when you have that level of aim. And it's going to be easy for them there just to roll on through. A formidable fight from those guys. You can see them already just building up, making sure there's not going to be any third parties. That's what would been their downfall, even not just them, but from other teams that are winning off spawn there. It's always going to be that third party that's coming on through. But look at this. Vico, Veno, Flixie getting active early on, trying to fight the team at Canyon Crossing. And this is where this team will thrive. As Flixie tries to get up on top of that hill, we can see Veno from another angle as well. As Vico's still trying to find his way in this fight as well. For Flixie, just looking for more angles. And they're just playing so well with each other, but also at separate positions. And I can't see Vico, so I'm not too sure where he is. And maybe that's why Flixie and Veno aren't just jumping in here. They're just trying to find a little bit extra Storm Surge damage. Because we saw them in that last game, wasn't it? They were looking for a little bit more damage. They were forced into that fight where Veno had to hit that 1v3 clutch. And of course, it didn't work out in the end. So maybe there's a little bit more proactivity here, Taco, in terms of getting Storm Surge damage. Hopefully for them, it'll work in their favor.
I mean, for Veno, Vico, and Flixie, they don't really have anything to lose. They're so comfortable with how many points they've been able to build in the first place on the leaderboard. It doesn't even necessarily matter to them. Sure, it'd be nice to find that Victory Royale that I think a lot of people are kind of anticipating to take place inevitably, but even if they don't get it, they are just sitting so lavish in comparison to a lot of these other teams, and Vic certainly wishing that they could find some kind of conclusion, but Veno and Flixie, they are just not letting up, just consistently peppering, consistently spraying. Vico, he's finally decided to join the mix and almost immediately catches an elimination for it. Make that 2, as Seke is gonna be next up to bat here is Vico, Veno, and Flixie. They certainly do not lack by any means in the fragging department, but probably just having fun with it, it seems like.
Yeah, Vico got all 3 there as well, and he was late. So he's turned up late and got all of the credit for those elims, which I'm sure he'll be very happy with. But now they've got this entire drop stops himself, and this is exactly how he went about getting those knocks. There was a beautiful one through the window, that left-hand peek. Vic had nowhere to go, so he only had to go into Vico. And unfortunately for the other team, fighting a trio with the ability of Vico, Veno, and Flixie is never going to go well. So for them, they have a nice extension to their loot. And Cranky and this trio. Interested to see what they do. Of course, we saw them sort of landing towards the top side of the map. which is a little bit of a change up of drop spot maybe. And this is a trio that have been coached today by seemingly everyone. Stormy Wright, Chicks, Malabuka, Artist as well. Not Malabuka. But lots of people inside of the call there, but Cammy already getting a nice knock early on. Which gets them a nice elimination. And this is a team that are able to make the most of that damage when it comes to Storm Surge. They're going to be able to box up inside of those big bases that we saw them do. And find a little bit more consistency. I think for them it's just more of the same, really, Taco. I don't think they're necessarily looking to poise for a victory. I think it's just, you know, like the other polls in the lobby of Combat, Blaha, and Mixon, it's simply just keep doing what we're doing, make those end games, and they can qual off this game if they have a solid end game.
Yeah, they really haven't done anything wrong. Everything has, for the most part, gone favorably enough that they're consistently finding themselves inside of those top 3, top 5 positions, and that's exactly where you want to be. If you don't confirm the Victory Royale, still being able to get that consistency placement off the leaderboard is always a nice touch. And it's also, consistency is definitely something that they're after when you consider how Major 1 panned out for them. Probably hoping to remain uncontested if they, you know, confirm themselves for the Major 2 finals. But they are definitely not the only ones. Mixing Combat Blaha, a little bit more of a scenic view, but Cranky just found himself in a very difficult position. He is entirely too split from the rest of his team, and Combat Blaha Mixon, they look hungry for an elimination. It's not going to take them much time at all. Poor Cranky, just one step too far behind the rest of his trio. Absolutely nowhere left to run.
The freedom that Blaha, Combeck, and Mixon can play with right now is unmatched because they've pretty much already qualified. I think it was 207 points going into this last game. So, to be honest, for this trio, they don't have anything to lose whatsoever. I think it was just over 200 points last week. I think it was 204, something like that, that qualified our teams into the Major 2 finals. They're in Group 1. So, Group 2, if anything is similar, it should be about the same.
Not to mention that they don't have to worry about that team at Seaport because Queasy, Swizzy, and Murstache, they're already out. They're already qualified for the Major 2 finals, and we know that Combat Blaha and Mixon aren't too far behind, but this might as well be a victory lap here. It's Combat helping to confirm yet another elimination for this trio. Could be part of the reason, though, why we see them going on tour so early, too, though, because they have been going in a little bit of an exchange with Seaport. Instead, they're going to have to find that surge elsewhere. Love the fact that they're being proactive with it, though.
They're being proactive. It's Della, Axe-Force, and Bevies. Bevies early getting knocked, though. Abdul gets tagged, so he's going to have to heal up after getting that initial finish and knock. And for Buzz, he's also going to try and get a heal off here as well, as Axe-Force and Della now have to pick up the pieces. And I think this is just something we've seen all day, where Axe-Force, Della, and Bevies, they have a successful off-spawn. Maybe they fend off a third party or two, and they end up in these sort of messy fights. The mid-game fights that just aren't going in their favor. It's what we saw a lot of previously of teams coming out of that Kappa factory, just not able to then turn that into a consistent endgame. There's always something that goes wrong in the mid-game, and that's just sort of the story of the day for this trio. And big moments for them, of course, in this game, because they're just sort of outside that top 5 inconsistency. So if that's the way they need to go about qualifying, they need to make this game count. But for Abdul and YZY and Buzz, they're just looking to try and spoil their party up in the top end of the leaderboard.
The mental toll, though, that's probably starting to unfold here for Bevies, Della, and Axe-Force, because if it's not one thing, it's just another. Every single trio just seemingly swarming their position, no matter how many off-spawn fights they win, and Axe-Force, sadly, gonna find his life come to an end here. Buzz, Abdul, YZY, all just trying to encroach upon where Della is currently boxed up at. But Della, they'll look to delay for as long as possible, possibly hoping for some form of a third-party exchange to maybe bail him out of this position. Side jump nearly coming into his favor entirely. Della's still in control of a little bit of the high ground, but with Abdul now making the approach from a separate angle, it's just too much firepower. And Della just doesn't have the HP to work with here to actually convert this into something more promising. A full trio just playing it safe until they know for sure that they can confirm it. And Della, sure enough, wiped yet again from the lobby. The dashy dash just proving to be their demise.
Yeah, just an ideal situation for them. Now they have to rethink. They're not going to be able to continue that collection of placement points they've seemingly been getting all day. Might be a win potential for them in that last game, but for Abdel, Buzz, and YZY, they've got a whole new problem to deal with. It's the freedom. It's the guys that don't have too much on their mind right now in terms of problems. It's Mix and Blaha and Combeck, and albeit Combeck going down, they do take out Abdel. So now it's all up to Buzz and YZY. But of all the teams in the lobby that you don't want to fight, it's a team like this, not only because of how good they are, but of course the amount of freedom they have right now. They could be just sitting back, relaxing, and enjoying themselves in this lobby, which is seemingly what they're doing.
Don't think there's anything much worse, though, than watching this tactical strike force land right on top of you. Blaha, Mixon, and Combeck. They were definitely the embodiment of just making sure that if you're going to be aggressive, be quick about it. Don't allow the opportunity for a third party to come into play. And Abdul, while he did manage to knock Combeck initially, you can see it didn't necessarily bode super well for the rest of his team, and YZY chased out by Blaha. Mixing Combeck and Blaha just continuing to one by one collect as many eliminations as they feel like, but this definitely has to be putting a pretty heavy mark in terms of their surge damage.
Oh, 100%. It's a bit of a disastrous situation for Abdul, Buzz, and YZY, because they're a team that were in second last going into this game. So that was almost the perfect start to their penultimate game, getting their Storm Surge done early in that fight against Axel, Stella, and Bevies. It was a perfect start for them, and they probably were thinking, right, this is great, we're going to be on the up here, and then who comes swooping on in? It's the team that you don't want to be fighting. But for Redoxy, Pablo, Wingu, and Chino, we've seen a little bit of them throughout the day. It hasn't been amazing, and likewise, they're a team that are just outside of that consistency threshold, so every move they make is just so important. And I think this is a team that we should see in the Major 2 finals. You see them just in their 13th place. 81 points, which is not enough, but they're going to need a solid game here to move up in the standings. It's just a team with so much experience, Taka, that it would be strange for them not to be in the Major 2 finals, albeit since we had, of course, Fredoxy not make Major 1 finals. It wouldn't be that shocking, I suppose, but it would be a little bit of a surprise, I guess you could say.
Fredoxy definitely just trying to prove that he is a contender. CZB, Eclipse, and Nathan, they also find themselves on a similar note. They will manage to collect an elimination, and they need every single point they can get. That quick flashing of the leaderboard showcasing that they are also just outside of that consistency threshold. And the last thing that they want is to have to rely on making their way to the Major 2 finals off the last chance qualifier. Only 3 games to work with in that kind of circumstance, and knowing that it's all down exclusively to winning, it's just so emotionally jarring that a lot of teams want to try and avoid that at all costs. But Eclipse, CZV, Nathan, got to be careful. They don't want to overexpose themselves by any means. Still, they have a lot of material to work with. And a lot of our teams today also just professional storm chasers, it seems like.
Yeah, a lot of these mid-game fights have sort of taken place in the Storm, and it's obviously just down to a lot of heals in the game. Getting that early damage for teams, they can sort of sit back. We saw that with Fredoxy, just quite happy to sit inside of the Storm, particularly when they do have that vault in their area. And for some other teams that do have that on their loot path, they can just come in and sort of scrap loot. For a team like Vico, Venom, Flixie, though, they're quite happy to sit inside of the zone with all the loot that they have and potentially find another fight. But it was that early fight, those early 3 eliminations from Vico, which really just set this team up for success for the rest of this game. And again, I think it's a team that these guys should be making it to Major 2 finals. It would be a huge upset if they don't. And I don't see a way that they don't, but there's always, I suppose anything can happen. They still need about 60 odd points, so still not said and done yet for this trio.
Would take a really strong performance from multiple teams in the lobby, and that's something that Mix and Blaha and Convict are trying to shut down. Some of these stragglers. Buzz looked like he'd been running a marathon, essentially, for how long he'd been trying to escape from Convict, Blaha, and Mixin. Fortunately, only so far left to run when you're getting chased to the absolute outskirts. Jewel, Tidy, and Sangil. Brutal boxcars. And they're just kind of waiting. Trying to maybe scope out if there's going to be teams that they can look to try and cut off. But Jewel knows Surge Base directly behind their current position. Want to try and poke some mod shots here and there. Maybe try to dissuade them from focusing you. I like this, though, from Tidy. Just trying to build as many fish as possible. Spend as much time as possible fishing. And this is something that I think Seti and Cammy definitely like to take advantage of early on from this split drop here at Brutal Boxcars, but knowing that there are other teams looking to play out the same game plan, gotta kind of approach with caution.
Wox, Ping, and Malabuka, team that are inside of that top 5 consistency right now. Not as solidified as some of our other teams, but they're a team that do have what it takes to win a game in this sort of lobby. We've already seen how treacherous the lobby has been to some of our top teams. Teams that you would have already expected to maybe get a win for now, or by now. And could this be their time? We've seen them switching up their strategies early on. We've seen them lurking. We've seen them having a couple of situations where maybe teams are third party and they've had to really be reactive to what the rest of the lobby are doing so far today. And they've been doing that very well. But Vico, Veno, Flixie, they're continuing their push through this lobby. Going to pick up their 5th elimination of the game. There goes Vexy. And they're able to just play so deep inside of this storm. Again, they don't need that storm surge damage. They set themselves up nicely previously, and then surely they're going to find Kaisers right now. And they are. That's a really nice elimination, a really nice clean up of that trio. So 6 so far. They're going to make their way in now, though. And they're just on a tear at the moment through this lobby. And it's just the speed at which that fight was able to be finished at, which is really important for that team.
Almost anticipating that Venom, Vico, and Flixie are going to fight yet again. Zara's team closing up behind them, but Vico, Veno, Flixie, it's just so concise the way that they actually tackle some of these fights. They do such an excellent job at just forcing trios to kind of look multiple directions at once, but you can only keep tabs on so much as a singular player. And just the way that they manage to time and time again isolate individuals, that is incredibly impressive. But they might have a whole different kind of problem, because despite everything, they find themselves still rather deep inside of the storm. Zangi, Rickboard, and Zara right behind them. And they're trying to definitely keep their heads ducked down low, throwing shots out where they can. But 1,200 above, Mini. There's no real reason for Vico, Veno, and Flixie to take on a fight. At this point, they can just focus exclusively on getting their positioning established.
Yeah, their position is pretty good there as well. They got onto that dead side of zone. You can see the zone just pulling all the way back to where they are now. But unfortunately for them, the next zone pulls a little bit further. They should have a nice, simple rotation along this sort of dead side, but didn't quite work out in their favor before. I did see Wox. Yeah, Wox down in the feed. So Malabuka and Ping are left as a duo. Really difficult situation for this team. I mean, we could be in a situation here, Taco, going into the last game, where if these guys fall, they need a win to qualify on through. So every single move that Malabuka and Ping make right now is going to be that much more important. Still need around sort of 80 points-ish in order to qualify through. And you can see that they're capable of doing it. The average eliminations per final game is the highest in EU per final. So it does seem like they just have what it takes, and we know it. They have what it takes in these sort of lobbies to find eliminations, find the damage that's required. So I wouldn't count them out yet, but looking a little bit bleak going into this end game, being only a duo here.
part of the problem just seems to stem from the fact that the last couple of weeks of the Div 1 finals, they seemingly lost their identity as a trio. They've kind of been going through an array of, I don't want to say dysfunction, but it's definitely been much more disastrous than what you would hope for. And Chino, Fordoxia, and Pablo, they might find themselves along a similar note. I mean, you've seen the highs, you've seen the lows with this trio just formed, but Malabuka doing what he can to try and scrape by. He's just running in to one hurdle after the next, though. QB and Loki not going to take a second to look back, though, so Malabuka will manage to restore at least a little bit of his shield, but Malabuka, he needs a refresh, and he needs it now. He needs mats more than anything. Doesn't have any builds to work with. The moment that he shows himself inside his zone and got picked off. Ping, though, going huge for this duo. Voltiax and Siren, and that's going to be the lifeline extension that they needed, as Malabuka and Ping can now move a little bit more confidently into the next zone.
Yeah, look at their materials now. They're just building so much metal. There's such a force now in this lobby. They have all of that material that they've been able to get. There's a team below them and a team above them, though. It's Glubshi, Grippe, and Frax that are just trying to knock on their door. The big problem for this team right now, albeit having a lot of materials, no shield. So they're struggling to, they're going to struggle to try and find those knocks, those refreshes, those shields, because they don't have the shields initially to take those fights. Let's have another look at what Ping just did right here. Really nicely done, and this is exactly what you want out of your fraggers. You want people that are going to be able to just hop inside of the box, hit those big damage shots, not whiff in these moments, which Ping didn't. He hit that first shot beautifully. Malabuka there to close on in as well, and that's what got them that huge refresh. And it's the calmness, it's the experience, it's the ability to stay cool in these situations where things look to be going against you, is what separates the good teams from the great teams.
Keep an eye, though, on Cammy, just consistently gazing up at the high ground, taking notice of who's actually trying to control it. But the moment that he looks back, Malabuka just continuing to remain a focal point for some of our healthier looking teams in the lobby. He will manage to reunite with Ping, but this might actually end up working against them. Cammy and Seti, while it looked like they wanted an opportunity there to get a little bit more aggressive, they don't actually know what kind of dire situation Malabuka is in. He's got to be very concise, though, with this Mythic Pump. He's essentially only got one shot to make it happen as far as a refresh is concerned.
All the weapons that you can 200 people with, that Mythic Pump can do it. So one big shot can turn their entire season around. As Pablo, Wingu, Fordoxia, and Chino. This is a team that we spoke about needing a solid game here, and they might get more than that as they're building up on hype. Claiming this position just outside of Seaport City. Way above the Storm Surge threshold as well, so the position, the elevated position above the rest of the lobby is looking really strong for them right now. I just saw Ping there going down in the feed, and we can see what Malabuka has to do, and this is what we spoke about. The problem that they have is they haven't got the health to get these eliminations, to get these knocks, and Malabuka only has 6 bills. He doesn't have the ability item of choice either, of preference, you could say. And he's just going to have to try and make his way and try and make anything happen. He gets it onto Sandgill. This is a perfect shot for him. Can he get that refresh? He gets the materials. It's a decent amount to keep him going in this game. The Siphon's going to retain a little bit of that white HP as well, but everyone else is looking at him, and unfortunately, it's too little too late for Malabuka. Big last game for them.
Just nowhere left to run. All the while, high ground continuing to spray these lower layers. Vico, also the lone standing member from this trio, but they have definitely been getting fraggy in this endgame. 8 eliminations already. Vico still looking to see if he can clutch up yet another one. Tex right next to him, but Vico, he's waiting for the perfect pounce to strike. Tex, though, gonna get the first jump instead, and Vico will be shut down here. CZB not even gonna get the opportunity to go for the revive. Instead, he's gonna opt to play the Chug Jug, just hoping that other players, other teams are going to wind up falling next to him and buying him a little bit more placement points.
Yeah, remember, that's a team that are just outside of that sort of top 5 in placement, so really big moments for him right there to clutch up. And Alex, Momsy, and Skyjump, I think this is a team that did end up landing Seaport, so a really nice position for them to be in. All 3 of them still alive as well. Materials are looking weak, but look who's on high. Look who's overtaken. It's Glubshi, it's Gripey, and it's Brax all the way up there. Pridoxy and company, they haven't got a chance to hold on to that high ground. And could this be the moment for this team? Now just down to a team all the way up on high, looking all the way down, just keeping on trying to apply as much pressure as possible, still alive as a trio, which is so important for them in these moments, just continuing to apply pressure down, and they have materials to tackle, so this could be their time.
Andalix, Mumsy, and Skyjump, though, they're hoping to kind of break their mark through. Instead, Andalix going to get caught out. Doesn't get a chance to keep moving forward. Mumsy, though, with the return fire, but France has been eliminated from this endgame here as Blaha, Mixon, Comeback, they're not going to be the ones fully in control of frontside low. They are looking to just break down everybody that's kind of straggling in last minute behind them. Team on height still doing what they can, though, to try and cause a little bit of disorientation here. Blaha, he will get a moment to utilize his chug jug, but there wasn't much left in it. They have to find these conclusive shots, and they need it now, but Gripe, Prax, Glubshy, they don't want to let this opportunity slip by. They want to be the ones to confirm the victory royale. Mixon, one of the last hopes here left standing, has unfortunately been knocked. Comeback in a 1 versus 3 situation, and it's just too much to handle. Prax, Gripe, and Glubshy find themselves guaranteed into the Major 2 finals with a Game 4 victory royale.
Absolutely huge game from that team. They needed it as well. 22nd going into that game. They needed a win. They needed something big to come through. And a team that we've seen have bright moments throughout today, making a couple of end games. They finally made it all work. And for them, they'll be seeing themselves in the Major 2 finals. Super excited to see what they can do in there.
Some of these other teams, though, might be getting a little bit nervous here, Minnie, because we only have one lobby left to work with, and there are a lot of teams that find themselves sitting just outside of this consistent threshold. But the way that Prax, Gripe, and Glubshy just made sure to stay so tightly knit, they knew that these lower layers were just too heavily collapsed on each other.
Yeah, I mean, Comeback, Blaha, and Mixon, they're greedy. They're already qualified. They don't even need the win. So for them, I'm sure they'll be happy with that second place, continuing their momentum in the day. But there's still so many teams that are yet to qualify through. So many big names as well. I want to see the leaderboard. Frankie, show us it.
I want to see the leaderboard too. I don't know if we can show it just yet because we do have to take a break. But before then, let's talk about Glubsy and Co.'s victory 11. Because as Mini Miner was saying, this is a win they definitely needed. They were not looking comfortable on the leaderboard before they went into this game. So I guess congratulations are in order.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you watch Game 3 and they tried to play for height, and unfortunately, you just had one of the best height players of all time up there in Queasy, and he put that right to an end. And so they were resilient. They didn't give up. They said, hey, look, Queasy got a win. Let's just try it again, lads, the next game. Yeah. And that's exactly what they did. And they reaped the rewards of that. Excellently done from this trio.
Yeah, you just got to keep on trying. You said it yourself, Levin. Queasy shut them down in like half a second, but this time around, they successfully took it and even took down who was the most consistent trio throughout the day, Blaha, Mixon, and Comeback, who've gotten third, and second. So now seeing the Glubshy, Prax, and Gripe were able to close this one out, needing it more than the trio that got second place. I mean, congrats to them. I'm excited to see how this last match now is going to pan out.
And I'm really excited for the Major 2 finals because the names that are going through are making me very excited indeed. We'll be talking about more of the names from Group 2, though, after this short break.
Step to the throne with confidence. Yellow bunch of clothes with an origin. Gave it a crowd, won't ever back down. Take me to the city, even bravely down. Been on the ground for the loot and the gold. We been locked in before you was home. Me and my squad stay goes so hard. Steady, take a loop, put it up like a god. One pump, getting out. Two-tone, wristwatch. Full set in this thing because we can never stop. Earn this from the grit and the grind every day.
The Fortnite music is going absolutely hard tonight, and so are our trios in Group 2. I hope we can take a look at the leaderboard now, because it is do or die. Our trio. Some big names have gone through. Some big names are standing on the precipice between making the finals and not to Carter. And we've got to talk about Ping, Wox and Malibuka, because the elims they're getting, I just would have expected them to be a shoo-in, but there's been a couple of games, I guess, where they haven't quite made it to the end of the end game.
Yeah, I mean, considering this next match is that last opportunity to qualify, I have my eyes kind of on that lower half of the leaderboard. 8th place for Ping, Wox, and Malibuka, and it was close as well. There was a moment where Ping almost went down before making it to that late game, but I think he just got back-to-back eliminations. He was looking insane, basically like a raid boss staying up, but they ended with top 10. They're gonna have to get a pretty good game here, Levin, if they want to close it out.
Yeah, look, I'm looking at Vico, Veno, Flixie, right? I think a lot of us maybe would have wanted or expected them to be a bit more comfortable in their position here. You know, I'm sure plenty of people would have predicted them to have already won a game by now. And look, they're, you know, sat in sort of the pole position to hold on as long as they have a good sort of final game here. But things just haven't quite worked out for them at times in these games. A bit unfortunate, a bit unlucky in certain moments that have cost them. But do I believe they'll get the job done? Yes, I do.
What is the conversation this trio is happening right now, Levin?
Ooh, well, knowing them, I don't know, to be honest. Like, it could be anything. But I think a lot of it will be centered around just making sure they sort of just do the same things they have been doing, right? They, you know, the games haven't been as maybe emphatic as we're used to, but with Vico's clutch last game, hopefully that momentum sort of pushes them on to get this last game done.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine a major finals without this trio, so fingers crossed for them. Let's talk about Mixon's trio, because this has been the most consistent trio of the night, and the numbers they're putting up are absolutely insane, Levin.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I sort of, you know, was looking at them in that last game, and Minnie sort of mentioned it, right? Like, these guys are already qual for the most part. And I sort of was looking at what they were playing, I was like, surely they're not going to just go win the game. Like, that's so greedy from them, man. Like, how greedy. But look, this is a team who, I mean, have performed as perfectly as you can in terms of a consistency team in this sort of format, right? They have been unwavering. They have been so prolific in these end games. I think they're going to now be putting themselves on a lot of people's radars going into the major finals next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking the opposite, though, Levin. You're calling them greedy. I'm saying, can they just finish it off already, right? Can they just get the victory royale? I mean, third, second. If they end up coming out on top in this last match, it is going to bump those players that were below them up a slot. So all the trios on the borderline, the CZB, the Pablo, the Tidy, all these people who are just right on the cutoff of qualifying want one of these trios in that top 5 to make it through. So I think, you know, they might end up winning this last match.
I feel like I'm one of those people who's taken this trio for granted, and I'm really excited to see how they perform in that stacked lobby next weekend. Zeti, Cherry, Cami, they're currently 6th. They look like they're pretty comfortable going into this last one, but let's talk about the bottom of that top 10. Tino, Pablo, Wingo, and Fredoxy. This is a trio I definitely haven't really noticed until the last couple of games. Levin, do you think they can hold on to that spot?
Yeah, they've done well to get themselves back in it, right? Because in the first couple of games, they were actually struggling with the aggression from Veno's trio. And so, you know, now they've able to find their footing, and I'm sure Veno's trio will be fuming at that a bit, right? You know, it's like these guys we took down in the first couple of games, and they're still kicking it. Like, how are they still here? A big last game needed from them. Mars Meadows, you know, maybe it starts getting personal between the two trios, right? Maybe Veno and them just decide, look, we are taking them out. We are stopping them from qualifying in this final game.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one to call, though, right? Because also Vico, Veno, Flixie aren't like as high up as Blaha, for example. So going down early could, you know, be detrimental to them. But it's all up to this last game and how they decided to play it out.
Let's bring up page 2 of the standings because we want to see the trios that are threatening the first page. And in terms of names, I have to say Turtle, Kaito and Hydro, it would be really disappointing for them if they don't make it through because they had such a great start to the night, Takata.
Yeah, they were looking like they basically had everything in their favor. I mean, they were just a couple eliminations. I mean, if Hydro didn't end up going down to fall, if they were able to stay up, it could have been it. But now seeing them in 13th place, I don't know, Levin. Do you think they can get a victory in this last game?
Yeah, you've probably got to think they'll need it, you know? There's a lot of teams that I look at that can just have big implications, right? Even like Anderlecht's below them. You know, we still have one more group next, right? Tomorrow we got group 3. I know Pink in that group, he's going to be licking his lips thinking, please, Anderlecht, don't qual, please, right? Like, you're sort of looking at anyone that lands your spot and you're thinking, please don't do it in this last game. Just dud the last game. Give me an uncon spot in finals.
It's time for me to put the pressure once more on Takata because earlier you were non-committal when it came to saying which trio would not get a victory royale. So which one is in this last game?
Which one is going to get the victory royale? You know what? I'm going to pick the boring one. I think Comeback, Blahan, Mixon, they got to just finish it off and get the VR. They've gotten so close every single match. Just do me a favor and win.
A boring prediction, but it will be very exciting if they do make it. Let's head back then one last time for Super Saturday to Taco and Mini Miner.
So close, yet so far away for some of those teams sitting just outside that 10th place position on the leaderboard, Mini. And with only one lobby left to go before we determine who our final 10 is for Group 2 heading into the Major 2 finals, a lot on the line here.
So much on the line. A lot of our big teams still yet to qualify, yet to sort of solidify their place in the Major 2 finals. I'm looking at sort of down the leaderboard as well. I want to see these teams that are lower down, maybe sort of bottom 20 in that sort of region. Can we see a big push from one of them now to pick up a victory? That's what's the beauty of this format. We can see a team that we weren't expecting to even be here in the Major 2 finals. We'll find out right here.
And hey, desperate times call for desperate measures, and for our teams that are outside of that threshold, Mini, they are certainly in a desperate position because you want to qual. You want to make it to the Major 2 finals. You want to solidify yourself as a team in contention for that Blade of Champions. Things are still continuing to be as annoying as ever, though, for Haruko's team. Fighting things out at Shiny Shafts, but the 50-50 one more time seemingly going to pan into Aiden, Hardfine, and Michael's favor. Aspes, the only one left standing, and it's not for much longer. Their dreams are now going to depend solely on that last chance qualifier, but this still needs to be a huge showing for ADN, Hardfine, and Michael.
Yeah, huge showing needed from those guys, and likewise, maybe not quite as huge, but just a consistent, solid game here for Veno, Vico, and Flixie required. They've already got 3 eliminations, so you can see them already looking pretty bright in this game. Things are looking good. With the way that the team play, you wouldn't put it past them in terms of their experience and their ability to just go ahead and win this last game and just, you know, make sure that they can get the job done. For Axforce, Bevies, and Della, they've had a little bit of a wobble here off spawn. Previously, I think it was early on, game number 1, I think it was, that they didn't win off spawn, but they've grown into the day, they've grown into the games, and they've been able to find themselves in a decent enough position now. But as we spoke about in the last game, it's all about those sort of mid-game fights where they've been struggling a little bit. The off-spawn situation has been looking good for them. You can see this Axforce a little bit further back from his teammates, and Bevy's just easily able to connect with a shot onto Earwig, who have put up a good fight. It's not been completely easy for them, but nicely done from them.
Maxi King trying to go for the double revive instead. Tim and his trio that are looking to be completely eliminated. Sure enough, Sake, Veek, and Adrix will be the surviving members here at Flooded Frogs, but trouble on the horizon, that's for sure. Another trio already looking to roll in. Voltiac, Siren, and Cool. They have been third-party connoisseurs throughout the course of today, Mini. And the problem for them isn't necessarily finding those early eliminations. It's more so carrying them over into a successful mid and end game.
And remember, this was the drop spot of Gripey, Lubshi, and Prax, so this is where I think a lot of teams see this as an opportunity. Maybe teams that don't necessarily know the area landing here, maybe teams that don't know the angles at which they can get shot from. You can see Siren, Voltiax, and Cool just trying to take advantage of that right now. Looks as though they are just going to disengage. But Adrix, Veek, and CK can see these guys winning off spawn here. It's a nice change of pace. It's a nice change of strategy. potentially for this team, who are taking advantage of this sort of free drop spot. And you never really know what you're going to expect when there is a team that qualifies through and leaves the drop spot free. Sometimes nobody goes there at all, but other times it can be contested. But for Siren, Voltiax, and Cool, they need a solid performance here as well in this last game.
Did invest a little bit of time in the early game. Still, might not slow them down entirely. Zangi, Rikbor, and Zara. We've seen them have their moments in a handful of these end games, but they want to convert it into a victory royale. They need the points more than ever. A strong fifth lobby finish could prove to be the difference maker here. Winning it outright, obviously the most ideal circumstance, but it starts with just making sure that you can actually get these early game eliminations. And Elise already haven't been collected. Sabari and Roman just trying to do what they can, buy themselves a little bit of time. That pulse scanner, though, not doing them any favors.
No, really not. As Zangi, Rikbor, and Zara, these guys need a big game. They need a solid game. If they want to get inside of that top 5 consistency, they probably need almost a win in terms of points anyway. So they need this big performance for Roman and Elise and Spari. These guys, unfortunately, down on the leaderboard. And it might just be a last chance qualifier situation for them, and it is. No chance of them making it into the top 5. As they're down, they're out. They're going to reconsider now for that LCQ.
A lot of these teams kind of just circling around whatever they might be able to find. Fordoxy, Chino, and Pablo. Fordoxy doesn't want to see his secondary prime. And he's also kind of similar to Pablo, where he doesn't want to sit out the Major 2 finals. He already experienced that from Major 1, and it's got to be a devastating feeling, and especially to be this close right now, Mini. Axe-Force, Della, they also find themselves just on the cusp of elimination here if they're not careful. Della, he's got to win his ones, though, up against Abdul. Abdul just continuing to crank upwards, continuing to maintain a steady overhead position. Get some nice tags. The distance there onto Della, that's going to force him to drop for a moment, but Della fighting back. Abdul, having lost his shield entirely, is going to be forced to come to a pause here. Unfortunately, the damage has already been done. Axe-Force having been claimed, but Baha, Convec, and Mixon have made themselves known. This is their exchange to win out.
This whole fight has just been deja vu. We've seen Abdul and company fighting against Axel, Stellar, and Bevies all day, and it's just been the story of Axel, Stellar, and Bevies this whole day, losing out on these fights after they win off spawn. And then we see Convec, Blaha, and Mixon again just running through the entire lobby, trying to find as many stragglers as possible because they know they're already qualified through. But for Della, this is a huge, huge moment for them. I think they do need a win in order to qualify. So all hope on their qualification to the Major 2 finals does lie with Della right now. You can see him just being very, very sneaky, not too sure about what Blaha, Mixon, and Convec know. I don't think they know anything really about his position. I don't even think they know he's still here. They might just think, oh, he's run away, try to rotate out. They're really trying their best. This is a very, very difficult thing. And the best part is that they can do this. They've already got an elimination. They don't even if they go down now, it doesn't really matter. They're able to spend a little bit of extra time here, and I think it's only a matter of time. They find Della because they're lurking towards this area. How is he still in this, Della? What is he doing? This could be the moment they look back on as a potential tide turner for their entire season when if Della manages to make this one out and end up getting the reboot. Oh, this is difficult.
Every little bob, Della just trying to keep his head above water here. Mixon thought for a moment that he'd noticed, but Convec, Blaha, they're both just going to circle back around onto Salty Dogs. Mixon just continuing to review, make sure that they have fully scouted out the area, but Della somehow, some way manages to survive. The damage may have already been done here, though, Mini, because even if he makes his way out, so much time has been spent just hiding that even if he is able to make a reboot play, his team is going to be so heavily hindered for their mid to end game.
Big moments here as well for Tidy and Jewel, who have lost Sanguild. And this is a team that are inside of that top 5 consistency threshold, so this is every single moment here is so important. I always think of Tidy as like a player that's sort of upcoming, but he's been in grand finals before, all the way back in Chapter 2, Season 8. So he'll be looking to make his first finals since then. Grand finals, that is. So longevity personified right there. But for Flixi, Veno, Vico, this is a huge fight for them. We saw them earlier on picking up 3 eliminations. They need to find this one if they have any hope of ensuring that they're inside of that top 5. You see Veno looking from the behind, really nice shots, really nice cleanup from that fight. I think it was only a duo in the end, in Fury and Craig, but really nicely done from this team, who really setting themselves up for success in this last game here, Taco. Sometimes teams can just back down if they need just a sort of top 5 situation maybe, or even just a top 10 to qualify. It may even be less for this team. They can sort of back down, sort of stay inside of their shell, if you like, and not go and play the way that they know they can play and will play. But this team are different. They know what they can do. They know their skill above the rest of the lobby. They're putting it on display for us.
They're just so good at corralling players into the exact line of sight that they want to take advantage of. It's going to take a lot more than that, though, for a team like Haijo, Kaido, and Turtle. Takata kind of touched on it earlier at first lobby. You would think that it was right there for them as far as the Victory Royale was concerned, but ever since they slipped quite literally off of getting chopped from the high ground in that moment, they've just seemingly struggled to establish their ground anywhere else. And with such seasoned teams like Cammy, Seti, and Hari still at play, makes good sense why some of these other teams could be struggling to be as consistent as they would like. Hari, Seti, and Cammy, though, just chopping out somebody else's surge base, no big deal.
That's exactly what we saw Queasy's team do previously, doing that exact same type of bait in that exact same position. So someone's been doing their homework. As Seti, Hari, and Cammy, they're quite happy just to let that fight go, or that surge base get chopped. They can get a couple of extra tags there onto Momsy, it was, who was, of course, boxed up outside there. It does seem like they've repositioned themselves at Seaport City, which they have to say is their home. Unfortunately, does get not an ideal situation if they do qualify to the Major 2 finals, because Queasy is still there. And he will remain there, I'm sure. But for Wox, Ping, and Malabuka, huge game for them. The nerves must be a little bit high for this team right now. 160 points going into this last game. Historically, last week, I think it was 204 was what qualified teams through. So this is a massive game for them. I mean, I don't doubt they would win in an LCQ format, right? When it comes down to their ability, but you just don't want to leave it up to that chance. You never know what can happen on the day. You never know who's going to be contesting you, what the lobby's going to look like, what the zones are going to do, even how you're feeling as a team. It's such an important game for them in terms of their potential for this season.
When a group is as stacked as this one, though, there's bound to potentially be an upset or two. Granted, that's one of the last teams that I would ever look towards in terms of not being able to confirm their spots on the battle bus for the Major 2 finals. But Momsy and Alex Skyjump trying to make themselves known. Recently evicted from Seaport City, now trying to be tenants yet again. Syla, Enix, and Pump, though, they're not trying to let it go for free by any means. Syla just gonna have to reposition here. Andalex and Skyjump, though, they've already been knocked. It's only Mumsy trying to fight back, trying to break through. Instead, totally collapsed on, though. Nowhere left to run, and a huge upset for Mumsy's team. They're probably hoping that having former familiarity here at this drop, it would have boded a bit better for them, but shut down by Syla and Enix's trio. That is just, it's a tough break.
Really is, yeah, not ideal at all. And I'm sure teams that would have been contested by Momsy and company, they'll be leaving for joy right now, but maybe that could happen still in the LCQ for them. It's not over, of course, for those that don't know. It is, of course, there is an opportunity, 3-game final in the last chance qualifier next week for 3 teams and 3 only. 3 Victory Royale winners to make their way into the Major 2 finals. So for anyone that hasn't qualified, there's still hope, although it's best to get it done here, Taco. This is the time to do it. 1 win in this lobby, or even just the top 5 is what will do it. As for Tidy and Jewel, we saw these guys without Sangild earlier, and they have now picked him back up, which is nice to see. And as I spoke about earlier, this is a team that are inside of that sort of threshold, so they need a solid game here. They need that consistency to come through. No eliminations as of yet, so you have to imagine their Storm Surge is going to be a little bit lower, but with less teams in the lobby, it's less of a concern as of right now in these early stages of the game, so they can afford to be a little bit more passive at this stage, but they do need to get that damage done as soon as possible.
Ooh, look like some issues as far as Joe and them are concerned. They're also trying to get a little bit of their surge damage online. CGB and Nathan, this is yet another one of our teams that I don't think many people would have expected them to have as many difficulties as they have had. When it comes to that consistency metric, Nathan, got to be real careful with some of these peaks. It's just a return fire across the way, causing such a huge threat. But when you are sitting right there on the brink of the bubble for the consistency placement, Mini, it is very easy to kind of let your mind get away from you and sort of start to imagine that kind of losing scenario. So a lot of mental force taken for granted here. I think that some of these players just knowing how to deal with those kinds of circumstances, a little bit of experience, and that's definitely the kind of caliber that I think CCB and Nathan fall into.
Yeah, I think so. They've got to play to their strengths at this point. If they feel like they maybe haven't had the best day, they're not looking for so many eliminations to get their Storm Surge sort of boxed up in two different Surge towers there. For Axforce, Bevies, and Della, this is a team that we know have struggled, and it looks as though Della has actually been able to pick up Axforce and Bevies. So remember when he was sort of camping and sat inside of that water, managed to finally pick them both up via reboot. Of course, that will mean that they've lost their Storm Surge damage that they gained earlier on in terms of Axforce and Bevy, so it's only Della's that they're going to be relying on that as of right now. So although things are looking better, it's still not perfect for that trio, who still need a really good game in order to qualify through. For Faded, Bendy, and Tex, this is a team that we've seen Spawn at Foxy have some success, but no, just as we were saying how things are looking okay for Della, Axforce, and Bevies, Axforce is down, and it's down to Bevies and Della to clutch up inside of this building. It's Blaha, Comeback, and Mixon, the team that everyone's trying to fight right now. As Della hits another great shot onto Comeback, it's not quite enough, albeit a huge shot. It's now Comeback on his own against Bevies. This is a huge fight for Bevies. Can he keep his team alive? Can he keep his team in contention for the Major 2 finals as another team rotates on through? The third party is here. The decision has to be made from Bevies right now, and he is just sitting back. He needs this game. This could be a season-defining moment for Bevies, and maybe this third party is just the saving grace that he needs.
Comeback, on the other hand, not going to be able to wiggle his way out of this one, but it's the fact that it was Comeback, Blaha, and Mixon trying to finish what they had started, essentially, with the way that they had chased out Bevies' trio over by Salty Docks, and now still making sure to be the thorn in the side here. Della doing just enough, though. The fact that Bevies is still kicking does prove to be at least a little glimmer of hope for this trio. It is just so difficult to begin to imagine, though, the way that this is essentially unfolded for them in Game 5. Bevies hoping that he could go for the reboot yet again, but it doesn't seem as if Abdul, YZY, or Buzz are going to stick around long enough to find out what happens next.
This is a trio that has had almost the most reboots out of everyone. I'm sure there's a stat about it, but they just seem to have always been in this situation where one or two of them are down and they're having to clutch, and you know, you can only do that so many times. So Bevies right now is going to have to yet again get another reboot going, and as I mentioned, they're going to lose all of that damage that they had on the other players. So it's just climbing over a mountain and then seeing there's another one to climb over again. It's just not ideal for them. We saw Venom, Vico, Flixie getting really active. Really nice zone pull here as well for them here in the 6th zone. Boxed up really nicely up on the top, commanding the rest of the lobby. They have some extra heals inside of this box as well. So for a team that just needs a solid game at this point with these number of eliminations, they've set themselves up in the perfect way, and the zone is playing in their favor as well, which is nice to see.
Sitting a little bit closer to the low ground, though. Alray trying to get some nice shots to connect, but Foxy Floodgate. You'd expect some teams to encounter some difficulties trying to make their way over some of these mountains, especially when you have to deal with the likes of other teams rotating in, like Malambuka, Ping, and Walks. But Vala, Twy, got a pretty set position here as Seti, Hari, and Cammy. They just want to get inside of the zone. That's all they're really after. And it's going to cost them a decent amount of material, but they have so many builds to work with. It's not an issue just yet.
Yeah, and they also don't need much from this game. They're just on the brink of being pretty much confirmed. 198 points going into this last game. So they really don't need much. They just need to secure it. They don't need to do anything too crazy in terms of aggression. They can just sit back and do what they do best, which is sort of consistently and making the end games. We saw Cammy there just overbuilding, making sure that they weren't going to get beamed and focused, because it's so easy to have that, especially in these lobbies where teams are just looking for any opportunity, any opening. Everyone has to be so opportunistic, and that's what everyone's looking right now. As Sangild, Jewel, and Tidy are looking for this opportunity to pick up some more damage, maybe a refresh as well. They're just spraying on through. All these other teams are just trying to get in as well. There's just so many different boxes, next door neighbors, people around that are trying to get themselves inside of this zone. Everyone next to you has the same goal of trying to get in, but then once they do, they're not friends with you anymore. They're looking back, they're trying to spray and prevent your team from getting through. All the teams on height as well. Those massive surge bases, they're not helping whatsoever. But for Jewel, Tidy, and Sangild, they're still not quite in the zone. Just about managed to get in there with a little bit of metal, but expended so many materials there.
The other issue is that they've essentially just been sandwiched inside of that edge of zone. It's going to be very difficult for them to even make their way out of where they've last based up. Same can't be said, though, for Seti, Hari, and Cammy. We saw them invest a little bit of core materials early on, but for good reason. Got a set position now to just kind of harass some of these other players looking to break through. For Doxy, Chino, and Pablo, they can't afford to go down just yet. They're trying to see if they can get a good refresh. They notice the body loot left over from Siren. They're going to try to be the first ones to go and collect it. But from the sidewall, Doxy never saw it coming, lost his shield entirely, nearly a disaster. But he will manage to skirt his way out of danger for the time being. Voltiax, though, guarding that body loot as much as he can.
You can see Frodoxy just being a little bit naive, if you like, with how all of those builds there were just not theirs. They didn't have the edit control over all those builds, so he didn't place those builds, he didn't replace anything, and that's ultimately what can happen. But again, Jewel, Tidy, Sangild, they made their way in. They need to go in just a little bit further to solidify them inside of this next zone. They are above the Storm Surge threshold as well, but they're still looking for as many tags as possible. It's the team that do need a good performance. They're inside of that top 10 situation in terms of that leaderboard. Of course, top 5 getting you into the Major 2 finals. So such a big moment for that trio. They need just to squeeze as many placements out as possible, pick up a couple of the limbs here and there as well whenever they can. Cammy, Seti, Hari, these guys can just ride out all of their materials, ensure that they just make it as far as possible. As there are a couple of teams rotating right next to them, so many shooting in the back as well. Is there a team that does have the Storm Surge, so they don't need to look for anything in particular? They can transform their way a path through. That was beautiful.
Absolutely lighting up CZB on that mountainside. You want to be greedy with that elevated position, but you have to remember just how many teams are actually keeping that same mentality in mind. Ping walks Malabuka, though, elevated just slightly over the rest of this lobby, but they're at the base of somebody else's surge base. Venom, Vika, Flixie, potentially overhead. For Doxy, though, he's lost Chino. A little bit of panic possibly coming into play here, but the double revive might be successful. A huge break for Pablo and for Doxy. But still, they've got to continue working their way, wrapping around the bottom of this mountain face. Doxy doing what he can to torp through. Just so many teams surrounding them, though, looking to cut them off. And for Doxy, sure enough, one direction, it's all it takes. Gets knocked in the process. Veno, Vico, and Flixie, all too happy, though, to be in this elevated position on the high ground. Just the luxury of spraying everybody underneath them. But Chino, Pablo, it's the end of the road here in Game 5, Mini, and everything's going to depend on how everyone else's performance is.
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be enough. I think they ended on about sort of 140-something, 150 points. Not quite going to be enough for that trio, but for Vico, Venom, Flixie, they're just in control of this whole lobby. They had so much material spare. For Jewel, Tidy, and Sangil, a similar situation what we've seen from some of our other teams. So many teams in this lobby are just sort of on that border. They're trying to retain their position inside of that top 5 for consistency. And this is a team that can do it. They have what it takes in these moments to play these end games and play out as many of their materials as possible. Of all the other teams that need it as well, Max, Malabuka, Wox, and Ping, this is a team that also need it. They just need to stay consistent here. They have that Storm Surge damage in the threshold looking really good, 700 above that. And they still have a decent amount of materials as well to continue plowing on through this end game. Every single move that these teams make right now just has that increased importance. The risks that they take have that increased riskiness to them. But for not much longer for Veno, Vico, and Flixie, as they're just all the way up on height. They're able to control the rest of the lobby. Not too many risks for them right now.
And the problem for Wox, Malabuka, and Ping is that they ran smack dab straight in to Seti, Cammy, and Hari on the low ground, trying to control that front-sided position. But the real issue, they needed a refresh. They might have had the materials to work with at the start, but they need more with the way that this zone is pulling over this slight peak of elevation. Malabuka now finds an opportunity here onto Abdul. That's going to be one knock. He's going to leave it up to Wox to actually confirm the body loot, get a little bit more of those siphon materials, hope that it can build just a couple more placements. All the while, Veno just collecting an elimination up above in the skies, but Malabuka and Wox, they need to be consistent here now more than ever, and working as a duo is going to make that journey difficult, but they've got what it takes.
Took out Seti right there, a little bit of revenge on their elimination onto Ping. So for Malabuka and Wox, they need to just keep playing out these materials. Does get beamed in the process as well. Wox there inside of the storm hits a huge shot, but it's not enough as Wox now goes down. They need the experience of Malabuka now to clutch up as many placements as they possibly can. Only 4 eliminations for them, so they are going to need every one of these placement points that they can get from this game. Huge moments that could send this team into the Major 2 finals. Likewise with Nathan and Eclipse. Now as a duo, this is a team that also can do it as well in these final few moments, just outside of that top 5 going into this game. This is surely going to send them in if they can continue with this plowing on through the rest of the lobby.
But take a look at what's happening in the low ground. ADN, Michael Hardfine, we knew that they had to go absolutely nuclear in this final match. They've had so many issues throughout the course of today. Nathan Eclipse, though, finally going to get shut down. They won't get a chance to keep this one rolling. Instead, Jewel, Tidy, Sengil, they're now looking to be the commandeers of low ground, but it could come at a cost. It could come at a price. No builds remain currently for Sengil. Looking behind him, it's ADN, Michael, Hardfine. They're closing in. They see the opportunity. They've got one knock. Can they get the other? Sangil's gonna fall as well, and Jewel, he's the last member standing.
Unrelenting pressure right now from ADN, Hardfine, and Michael. They're dominating that low ground, but I think they get taken out as well. It's Vico that's causing absolute havoc down there. It's Vico and Veno up on a high. Can they take this final game? As it looks like Zara, Zangi, and Rickball are the only team that is still standing as a full trio. So Veno and Vico are going to try their very best now to close out this game. Jewel is still alive as well, so it can be done. A solo clutch is possible, and Vico also now needs a solo clutch too.
But Vico still has to worry about what's taking place directly underneath it. 1 versus 3 mini, and it is never easy to try and actually confirm these. Jewel won't be able to be a part of the conversation any longer. Vico's got his work cut out for him, but it's too much to bear. Rickbor, Zangi, and Zara find their saving grace with a Game 5 victory royale, and it couldn't have come at a better time.
Absolutely huge for that team. That's exactly what they needed going into that last game. They were only on 101 points, so they needed a victory royale, and I'm super excited for them. They've played pretty consistently today. They've had a really solid day overall, and I think it's nice for them to be inside of the Major 2 finals based on that performance. A huge way that they were able to play on that low ground, stay together, alive as a trio, and I think that's the most important thing for this trio at the end. They were the only team that were alive, all 3 of them, and they just took advantage of it. They didn't jump in as a solo. They didn't get too excited. They made sure to play each other or off each other really well. And I think for the Italians there, they're going to be overjoyed that this team are going to be in the Major 2 finals.
It really came down to the wire as far as Zara, Zangi, and Rickport are concerned, but you said it best, Minnie. This is exactly what they were after, exactly what they needed. The fact that they are able to now fixate their position on that Major 2 Finals battle bus has got to be such a huge feeling of relief here, but that's going to wrap up all 5 games from us here today, Minnie. It's been an absolute pleasure witnessing everything that took place in Group 2, but we know our 5 winners. What we don't know is our 5 consistency measures. So, Frankie, what have you got for us?
Italy, guys. Great to see the Italian trio make it through. Takata was discussing whether he was able to say Mamma Mia on the broadcast. Takata, I think you're allowed. Take it away.
Yeah, this is exciting, Frankie. And you know why this is exciting? It's not only because Rick Borzangi and Zara just got that victory royale, but they got it onto Venno, and Venno was the player that chopped them down and originally took that victory royale away from them in the previous matches. So now being able to come back and not only get the VR, but get it on the people that stopped you from doing it earlier on must feel good, Levin.
Oh, that is one of the best feelings, right? To get that revenge, like you say, must be amazing. And honestly, they probably are less focused about that. They're more focused on the fact that they do get to play in the finals. So really happy for them. Like the casters mentioned, great performances earlier on in the day. Well deserved it.
Yeah, they've provided us with some of the most thrilling moments from tonight's game. So huge props to Rico Burr and the guys again. We'll see them in the finals next weekend. Let's take a look at all 5 of our trios, though, who made it to the finals via victory royales. Because, of course, it's not just those guys we've been talking about, Zara, Zangi, and Rico Burr. If we go all the way back to game 1, Robin, Cheatin, and Trexa claimed the first victory royale of the night, Levin.
Yeah, sleeper team, but they were able to get it done. Some great talent there. Next game, Chap, Teeny, Skavi. Really excited for these guys, man. You know, when you look at how last year played out, it was Major 2 when Chap and Teeny started to really light the world on fire in EU, and this might just happen again this year.
Oh yeah, and as expected, game 3, Swizzy, Queasy, and Merstash, they were uncontested in this group. Will they be uncontested going into the major finals is the main question. Being contested last season caused them to get 4th, so hopefully this time around it will change up. Game 4, Glubji, Prax, Gripey, great job closing that one out. I believe they had a close game leading up to that, but they still got it on the 4th match, Levin.
No, absolutely. Great. Honestly, all around, some great wins, some great winners. You know, when you look at how some of the teams won their games, very relentless in their attempt and their pursuit of it, and eventually got it. So, well deserved.
Any shining stars that you weren't expecting standing out to you tonight, Levin? Because it was a stacked lobby.
Ooh, shining stars all around the board. Well, I mean, we know one of the teams that called on consistency. You know, Mixon's trio, you have to say, have been the shining light in terms of consistency, the level that they played at. Obviously, didn't get the win, and some people could say, yeah, but they didn't win. They got so close, they didn't win. Still great games played by them today.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what they cook up next weekend. Let's take a look at the 5 trios who qualified through consistency, because it was incredibly tight in the top 10. So let's take a look. Black and Mixon, and Convict. That was a clear one to go through. Thank goodness for Vico, Venno, and Flixie. They had some big number games there. And let's look down at Ping, Wox, and Malabuka as well, Takata. They wanted this so much. And at one point, though, it looked like they might not make it.
Yeah, they were able to close it out, but it looks like, you know, due to Rick Borzangi and Zara winning that last match and not being in the top 5 after getting that victory royale, CZB Nathan just missed out on it, and Ping, Wox, Malabuka got that last spot. But shout out to Sangild, Tidy, and Julie too, who were able to push themselves into that top 5 going into that last match.
Look, we said today, or you said today, there was going to be an upset, and I flamed you for not picking who it was going to be. And now I'm going to flame you again because you were wrong. And we, you know, all the big names, everyone was, oh, one of them's going to make it surely, or one of them's not going to make it surely. They all managed to sneak their way in. Look, they made it close towards the end. The fact that Malabuka's trio was sort of the last team to call on consistency is surprising somewhat, right? You wouldn't have probably put them down for that position. But at the end of the day, they make it in, they have a spot in the major finals, and that's what matters most, for them to continue to show what they can do on the biggest stages.
So one of the things that's so exciting about this format, though, is you are really rewarded for both the consistency and just going all out, obviously. With being able to qualify through a victory royale, I think is really, really tempting for a lot of these trios to Carter. I have to say, I'm disappointed that Nathan, CZB, and Eclipse didn't quite make it through. I wonder if we are able to take a look at page 2 and just see how close some of these trios were. Turtle, Kaito, and Haijo, they were definitely a trio to watch at the start of today. Unfortunately, just could not maintain that momentum, I should say. Takar.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of points, there is quite a big difference between 10th and 11th. The main thing that kind of didn't go CZB Eclipse and Nathan's way was what I mentioned earlier, is that the trio that won that last match wasn't in that top 5, top 10, depending how you look at it. So they needed that to kind of bump themselves in that final spot. But I mean, overall, the players that did qualify through consistency obviously deserved it.
I'm really excited to see how these teams bounce back come last chance qualify, because it's not done. Their seasons are not done, but I am looking at Fredoxy, Pablo, Chino. Look, I like to stir the pot a bit. I love these guys, great guys. I've met Fredoxy, amazing guy. Chino, I've met him as well, super nice. But Fredoxy, this could be another season in a row of not making it to the major finals. Obviously, he was playing with Thomas, last season with Trippin as well, and they didn't make it. You look at Chino as well. Chino was playing in the major finals with Pink and Nebs. He decided at the end of the season, I don't want to play with you guys no more. I want to go play with my Danish friends. And so far, playing with the Danish friends ain't working out too good. So last chance qualifier, all eyes will be on you, my friends. Can you come back? Can you make it happen? Can you prove the doubters wrong?
Are you firing shots at the Danes, Levin?
I'm not firing. Look, we got a lot of Danish people in production, so they might cut my camera feed any second now. I'm not firing shots at the Danes. I'm just saying there's a lot of pressure on these guys to deliver come last chance qualifier, which is even more reason to watch it.
Yeah, I'm very excited for the last chance qualifier. It's so delivered back in Major 1, and it's definitely going to deliver again this time. Takata, you looking forward to Group 3's action tomorrow?
Oh yeah, a lot of big names. Mr. Savage, I know there's a lot of fan favorites competing, so I'm excited to see how Group 3 tomorrow plays out. Obviously, last chance as well for the trios that weren't able to. Only 3 trios will qualify through last chance, so it's incredibly difficult to get the job done, but I'm excited. I'm ready for it, Frankie.
Can we get 11-2K guarantee? Any predictions for tomorrow?
How do I get the fans on side here? Reason the deal with Mr. Savage. Win game 1. One and done. Bang. That's it.
It was a bold prediction, but I don't think that was 11-2K guarantee. Thank you so much for tonight, guys. Thank you very much to Mini Miner and Taco. I can't wait, Levin, to be proven wrong tomorrow. You look a little bit hurt there. I'm sorry. I love you, babes. And I love you guys at home for watching. We will see you guys tomorrow, but don't forget, on stream in a couple of hours' time, you do have the guys from NA, so do stick around for Zeke and the gang. You know he loves his Fortnite fam. That's all for us tonight, though. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's sound that one.